If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
What's going on, guys? And welcome back to Tales from the Archives. We're covering chapters 4 through 15 of Plagueis. We are back with the boys. However, we're missing Tony, Star Wars Sith. He could not make it tonight, so send him some love. He got caught up at work. But hey,
he ate an entire Christmas tree.
Dude, I would not recommend it personally. I've done it myself.
Keep an eye on the one behind you, Will.
It's gonna eat you. But I'm Grayson from Mortis FM, and with me are some of my best friends in this amazing community. Connor, we will start off with you.
Hello there. I am Connor from Beyond the Dune Sea. Excited to jump into this cavalcade of darkness and misery. It's going to be awesome.
And I'm Seth from Beyond the Dune Sea, and I'm excited to be here.
General Kenobi, hello there. I'm Cole, the other half of Mortis FM. And would you believe it, I also feel a little bit of excitement of also being here.
Will, 26, plays younger. I'm one half of Dark Side Secrets with Tony. Tony decided to ditch, and yeah, it was completely his choice too. He told me. He lied to everybody else. He said, I don't want to do this tonight.
Yeah,
he said he didn't like the chapters. But yeah, and he's not here to defend himself, so that's just what we're going with. But I am also excited to be here.
Good. Well, should we? I want to shout out Andrew Haley, who he's one of my dude. I love you, man. You're awesome. Thank you for the congrats on the 60 subs. Yeah. So, is there anything else I have to say before I just go and jump into the summary before we start talking?
We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
We do
have
a
you
lot.
read chapters 4 through 15 on Darth Plagueis? If not, you can do it real fast. We'll wait.
Yeah.
And then we'll,
Like the
then
Flash?
we'll go over it.
Just
Yeah.
booking through it. Yeah. Oh, see what I did there? Book. Anyway.
Yo.
Alrighty.
And
I want to.
starting out like this, huh? All
He
right.
said the thing.
He's here.
Yo, Retney's in there. I knew he'd be here, man. I was already ready. It's like Retney's gonna keep us accountable with the lore in the chat, and I'm
Hope
happy
everyone
for it.
studied.
I'm a little nervous. It's like I'm giving a book report and he's the teacher. And I'm like,
What did you learn? I want to say also for anybody who is watching, this summary that I'm doing is a lot more comprehensive than last time around because we covered a lot more. So if I'm dawdling, let us know for next time, and I won't do it. I just want to make sure that anybody who did not read and just wants to catch up and get our thoughts, I want to provide that service for you. So, and also for my friends here, if this summary sucks, let me know. You
it's
ready?
going to be great, Grayson. It's going to be
Thank you,
awesome.
man. Yo, Quinlan Voss. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tony's not here. Alrighty.
Tony is busy catching up to chapter 15, I'm sure.
Let us begin with the summary. Where we left off last time, we continue. Plagueis wipes out the crew of the Woebegone with ease and attempts to keep some alive using midichlorians, but with no success. He uses the medical and piloting skills of the ship's droid 11-4D to heal his infected wounds and pilot the ship to a space station owned by Boss Cabra. Cabra? Whatever. Cabra. Using his true persona of Magister Hego Damask, the ship is disposed of on a station in the Outer Rim, and he goes to his home planet of Moonalist. He reunites with his friend/advisor, Larsh Hill, who he reveals what he has done to Tenebris, a.k.a. Ruges Gnome. Plagueis takes 1140 to his island, Abora, where he shows all of his experiments and archives of various cultures, species, and runs some studies on himself as well. Plagueis holds the gathering on Sojourn, where various influential organizations meet to draft deals. He makes various deals, including one with Gardulo the Hutt, a group of Yanshori. He also angers the Grand Protectorate quite heavily, before finally meeting with the owners of Subtext Mining, if you remember who those guys are, and he threatens them. They give information of a massive plasma deposit on Naboo that the Trade Federation wants to use as leverage to open up galactic trade with that planet. He then bans the Subtext Mining crew to an unknown world, but he doesn't kill them. After the gathering, an intruder triggers the fortress's alarms. Plagueis tracks the intruder to find it is another student that Tenebris trained, Darth Venomous. He bests Venomous in saber combat and forces him to consume a local poisonous flower, but doesn't kill him. Venomous' comatose body is returned to Abora for studying. We learn of Plagueis' origins, and it is revealed that Plagueis was part of Tenebris' plan to breed a powerful apprentice. We will get into the specifics of that later. Using a list of Force-sensitive beings that Venomous was watching, Plagueis begins tracking them down to prevent endangerment of the grand plan. Starting with one at a casino in Liana City, they discover it is actually a Shaidu shapeshifter. After tracking them, they interrogate and find out they are collecting money and protecting the reputation of Carid Sant II, who owns Cyanar Technologies and is in massive debt after his father was coincidentally assassinated by Darth Plagueis. We'll learn about that later, too. Sant is being threatened by Black Sun to oust him from the company by revealing his financial scandal. Plagueis then goes to investigate on Seleucamai, where people are pilgriming to meet a cult leader, Akachi, which is Sacy Ten's species, if you didn't know, planning to create a following of Darkside disciples. But Plagueis eliminates her with ease as well, in a very cold fashion. Him and 1140 move on to a sanatorium on Bedlam, where they are looking for a Nautolan who escaped onto Abraxan. Plagueis tracks down the Nautolan, who is subservient to Venomous, but is presumably killed by 2 interceding Jedi on the planet. We jump to a meeting held by Damask Holdings, where they discuss with a representative of Naboo whose party needs help winning the election. Bon Tapalo is his name. They catch wind of an inside man of an opposing house, named only Palpatine. Plagueis and the Moon travel to Naboo to further the deal, coming to an agreement. Plagueis then finds Palpatine and happens to befriend him, coming to an agreement where Palpatine will be a spy amidst opposing political parties of Naboo. Plagueis, as he gets closer to Palpatine, suspects that he may be in possession of the Force. Plagueis angers the Grand Protectorate even further on Malastare and orders the subtext mining representatives he kept alive to be killed and dumped at the HQ of subtext headquarters. Plagueis returns to Naboo and is forcefully brought to the estate of Kasinga Palpatine. Kasinga threatens Plagueis, telling him to back off from meddling with Naboo and his son. Plagueis visits Palpatine on a retreat to Chandrilla and inspires him to finally rebel against his family. Palpatine, while leaving Chandrilla, is intercepted by his father. They get into a very heated argument, which leads to Palpatine brutally attacking and murdering his family with the Force. Palpatine calls Plagueis for his assistance, and the Sith Lord agrees to take care of the situation. A week later, Plagueis meets with Palpatine and inducts him into apprenticeship as a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious. Sidious begins his arduous training before we jump nearly a decade later to 54 to 52 BBY. Plagueis and Sidious feed their powers in the dark side and hone their skills in various training regiments and rituals. Palpatine, now an assistant to Vidar Kim, Naboo's senator, and an ambassador for Naboo itself, discusses with various world's delegates regarding the Trade Federation and Damask Holdings' effect on Naboo's profits. Interrupted, Kim gets a call that informs of his family's deaths in a ship crash. At the funeral, Kim expresses that he wants his lone surviving heir, Ronhar, who is a Jedi, back from the Jedi Order. Palpatine and Ars Varuna discuss further about the Trade Federation as Palpatine plays both sides, as usual. Plagueis' experimentations of conquering the midichlorians continue with success. Palpatine, in his visits to various Sith worlds, goes to Dathomir and finds a woman who is giving away her son, Maul. He takes him. On Sojourn's gathering, Sidious and Plagueis speak of how they will dismantle the Jedi from within, making them enemies of the people. Plagueis regales the tale of killing Carid Sant long ago for his master. He uses it as the chief analogy that an assassination will have to be committed on Senator Vidar Kim, lining up Palpatine to take his spot. There we go. That catches up to speed. I know it was long.
Whoa. I
How
didn't
was
even
it?
have to read this. I didn't know you were going to do that.
Listen,
All right,
I'll put
everyone.
it- I'm
Thank you for
double
tuning
time
in
for
to
this.
Tales from the Archives. See you next
I mean,
time.
that's it, right? I mean, that's what happens.
There you go. It is what happens. But hey, I glanced over a lot of fine details. That is the best I've got in a short amount of time. So I guess it's best to just kind of get into maybe our thoughts going back from 4 to 15 of what I discussed. But hey, I mean, I kind of just want to ask overall, like, how we vibing with this book?
I mean, I think it's pretty wild. I think that the stuff I kind of split this part that we read into two parts. There's Palpatine, there's pre-Palpatine, and then Palpatine.
Mhm.
And seeing Plagueis's adventures, for lack of a better word, before Palpatine were very fascinating. His Obviously we know from Revenge of the Sith he had fascination with midichlorians, but to actually see him experiment, it's so calloused, like very, very psychopathic. He has zero empathy, but it's almost like I don't know if you guys felt this way, but he doesn't feel like he's evil in the sense like he has malice. He is just evil in the sense that he has no empathy, which is pretty interesting, because I feel like Palpatine he's having a good time being evil, but Plagueis, I almost feel like in his mind, he is doing what he feels is right for the galaxy.
It's the grand plan.
Yeah, the grand plan, the messing with midichlorians. I mean, there is the power, he's seeking the power, but I feel like in his mind, he's doing it all for this greater good. But yeah, that was kind of my general thoughts.
Yeah, I think in that, I think I agree what you're saying about Plagueis. It almost seems like he is like the kind of the textbook psychopath, where he just seems to lack empathy, where he doesn't look at someone dying with malice or anything. I mean, at times he does, but mostly it just seems to be intrigue. And I would hate the idea of being like on my deathbed and someone just watching me to see what happens to me. And he does that a lot, actually. I've noticed quite a few times that the book just mentions that he is observant of how someone's life force leaves their body. And I mean, I feel especially bad in a certain way for Darth Venomous, because he is just at the whims of Plagueis's experimentation here. But yeah, chapters 4 through 15, I think that Darth Plagueis, like as a book, was not what I expected it to be. I can't exactly say what I expected from the book, but I am pleasantly surprised. Surprised to be sure, but a welcome one. Because I think it takes like a lot of the great parts about the Phantom Menace and just makes them even better. For once, it makes. I mean, I remember I had discussed this with Grayson very briefly. That the book is basically like, oh, you didn't like the political intrigue of the prequels? Well, here is more of it, but it's also better, and it's explained in a cohesive, digestible way. It took me a couple times, like I'd have to reread some certain sections to go like, oh, what is he talking about? But eventually I got it. And I just really love how, even from the start, it's just planting these seeds leading up to the Phantom Menace. I think it's done in a very beautiful way. So I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
So
nailed the head on the whatever. Nailing
the nail.
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Screwed that hammer in.
What were you gonna say, Seth?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I really liked it up until so after he finds Palpatine, I feel like it gets way better.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, oh, okay, now we're really getting the ball rolling. Up until then, I'm like, okay, we're on these misadventures, finding these people, offing them, having Jedi off them, and everything. But then when he finds Palpatine, it's like, oh, okay, like now we're really setting up the prequel trilogy. And so after finding Palpatine, that's when I was like, I'm here for all this. Before then, I'm like, this is okay.
Yeah. I don't think it, for me, my favorite section in the book was, favorite is a strong word, but what I did really enjoy him going out and killing the people that were threats to the grand plan, which is something that he makes very prevalent. And in those chapters, you kind of get the idea that like, well, maybe he doesn't want he wants an apprentice, but like also he's almost okay with the fact of like, maybe I don't need one. Like maybe I am the end line of the Sith, and it doesn't get any. I mean, that's what he's trying to do. But I mean, when he goes up to the Akachi cult leader girl and just like shocks her, I was like, and then walks away, and the entire cult is just completely dismantled. They're just in shock and awe, and they have no purpose anymore. I was like, that's cool. Like that is really cool that Plagueis is worried about not just the Jedi, but also any interceding dark side threats. It's really cool.
Yeah, that was interesting for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, Seth. Like when Palpatine shows up, that's when the gears get turning. You're like, all right, let's get started.
Yeah, I also like how when he reaches Palpatine, the perspectives shift from 1 to 2.
Yes.
And now Palpatine is a core character that we follow. It seems like it's kind of going back and forth between Plagueis and Palpatine. But yeah, I also really liked that those moments beforehand where it's just Plagueis on his own, covering his bases, you know, dotting his I's and crossing his T's, trying to make sure that everything's in order. Yeah, as soon as we got the name drop of Naboo, I was like, oh, here we go. We're getting closer and closer to finding Palpatine. And speaking of,
I saw Retney's comment.
Retney's comment made me laugh.
Oh man,
you're never gonna live that down.
I can't wait for it. Can't wait for him to show up. Yeah, it'll be awesome. It's my favorite.
I mean, from what we know, could he? Like,
just to let the viewers know, we are at chapter 15 right now. So just
spoilers.
No spoilers.
I don't know what happens to
you. Better not tell me the Plagueis dies, dude. I swear to God.
So what did Will think? We didn't hear Will's opinion.
So not to sound like a dork, the first time I read this book, I hated that. I really enjoyed it, but now I think this is a testament to just us doing this between the 6 of us. Sorry, Tony. It makes me look for the between the lines a little bit more, which the more that you look between the lines, the more that things connect underneath. So I love this book even more upon the second read, and that we're taking our time with it between the pieces. Like we're not just going, okay, read the whole book and then we'll talk about the entire book. That we're sectionalizing it is pretty cool. I do think there's an element, at least for me as somebody who is an impatient person, when it's Plagueis going through his adventures as the adventures of Plagueis, if you want to call it that, there is a point, at least for me as a reader, where I'm like, all right, is he going to meet Sidious? Where's Sidious? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here?
Right.
And then the same thing with because now it's happened with Maul Baby is like, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Obviously, like knowing what happens in the book, but it is that thing of, at least from the first time reading it, waiting to see what's going on, and waiting for those things to connect, which I really enjoy, because as a Star Wars fan, you love the interconnectedness of things. But I think truly Plagueis is, upon the second read, Plagueis is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, only because, and to go back to Connor's point earlier, there's one point, and I think it's chapter 6, and we can talk about those chapters specifically later on, but where I highlighted something and I was like, how honorable he was for a Sith at times, where he's talking more about like, he says something about not wanting to instill fear because that's not what the Sith's goal will be moving forward, which is the exact opposite of not only the galaxy's viewpoint of the Sith, but like what we know the Sith of when it's just Palpatine in charge of everything. So I really enjoy the different perspectives. You see so much in the Phantom Menace of it being from the Jedi's perspective, but this being from the Sith perspective and it's going on at the same time is very cool to see that duality.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book is such like an inverse to what we see in the prequels, but it sets up so much. Like it is so prequel injected, and I love it. I mean, from the little mentions of, you know, the Trade Federation to the Techno Union to you know, the Mask Holdings, which is, you know, leads into like Larsh and then Sandhill, like the people that we see that end up making up the Separatists, like it's, and then, you know, the revelation of like, hey, we can't just take the Jedi head on. Like people aren't just gonna, like, you know, the Jedi will sect off from the Republic, like they will rebel, and it's like, well, what if we take them out from like the inside, and make the public eye turn on the Jedi? It's just the planning and the meticulous nature of these characters is so cool. And before we started reading, Retney, you posted, I don't even remember what it was, but it was like your favorite Sith Lord was Darth Plagueis, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like I've never really heard that take. And thus far, he is on track to be that for me, or at least one of my favorites. Unless you count the non even canon to Legends dark side ending of The Force Unleashed, where like Lord Starkiller, but that doesn't really count. Plagueis is like he is cemented in Star Wars lore because of Revenge of the Sith, and this book is Legends, but I don't know, when I read this book, and I'm curious how you guys feel, like there's so much that I'm gathering from this book that still fits into canon. Like it still fits. Like, there's so many lines that I've underlined that I'm like, wow, like say what you will about The Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of stuff in here that alludes to things that they did in The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, and I'm like, that's really cool. Like, I wish it was executed a little bit better in that movie, but like, you can see the seeds were there, like in how Palpatine and the Sith and just his interest in general of the transition from Plagueis. It's just so good. It's so good, man.
I think one of the things that I found fascinating is Plagueis was a bit of a revolutionary to the Sith, but he also had like a utopia view of the Sith. Like the rule of two worked for a reason because of the Sith's nature. It understood the Sith's nature. And Plagueis, I think, had an idealistic view of what the Sith could be. But ultimately you needed in order for the grand plan to truly be executed, you needed a Palpatine who also understood the true nature of the Sith, and not to how should I say, not to try to make them into something that they aren't. And he understood that the Jedi are one thing, the Sith are one thing, and he knew that they had to rule. But Seth mentioned it to me earlier, is like a rule of one. That was Palpatine. Like, yeah, he's going to have his apprentices, but it was never intended to. None of them were ever intended to usurp him. Where I think, and Plagueis even mentions during these chapters that he wanted an equal.
Yeah,
he didn't
like a
want,
partner.
Yeah, a partner.
Yeah.
And I think that is ultimately Plagueis's downfall, is he had too idealistic a view of Sith. And maybe if there were two Plagueises, it would work. But just by nature of the dark side, you can't have a partnership relationship.
One to have the power, one to crave it.
Exactly. So
Plagueis's perspective on the rule of two is very wishy-washy at times. Where he's like, at first, like it's kind of like, like I don't know if I really like, oh, we have to respect it. Oh, but now I don't really buy into it. But also I do need an apprentice because that's how it's meant to be. But I don't want him to be my apprentice. I want him to be equal to me. Oh, Palpatine's that guy, but Palpatine's like, no, like that's probably what ends up. We already, without, we haven't finished the book, but we can already assume that is Plagueis' undoing, is that he presumes that Palpatine is in it for a partner. He would never kill me. We're partners, right? And Palpatine's like, no, I want it for myself. Like,
but in that though, it's also fascinating that Plagueis' idealism was the necessary jumping point from a Tenebrous to a Palpatine. Like, I don't think you could just have Tenebrous taking on Palpatine as an apprentice and things work out the way that they do ultimately. I think that Plagueis is that necessary jumping point, that pivot in the Sith in order to create a Palpatine. So it's fascinating where it's like, yeah, Plagueis came up with all this stuff, or he really put into motion the grand plan, but I don't think he could have executed it.
It is, as Palpatine says, ironic, because Plagueis was like, I'm pretty sure like almost as soon as Tenebrous died, he's like, this grand plan is going to end with me. This is where it was like, I am the one that's meant to do this. But in actuality, Plagueis was essentially just meant, at least in terms of how his destiny ended up being, Plagueis was meant to be a bridge for Palpatine. Yeah. And that's it. realistically, Palpatine wouldn't have been able to do it without Plagueis. But that doesn't mean that as soon as it was done, they would continue to be partners and rule together. Palpatine, was just waiting for the right time. And I think after that, having been taught by the idealist Plagueis, Palpatine then just did not have it in mind to be supplanted ever. He, that this was going to be Palpatine's eternal empire, basically. So yeah, it just makes it really interesting, really ironic.
So, do you want to talk about like individual chapters?
I'm down.
Or favorite
down.
parts? Favorite parts?
Let's go through it.
Yeah, man.
Okay. Well, here I'll start us for chapter 4. So we start off. Plagueis just mows down the crew members of the Woebegone, which is what a creative choice to tell that from the perspective of 1-1. What was man? I've already forgotten.
11-4D.
11-4D.
Or 11-4D. I don't know how. Yeah.
4D. I'll just call him 4D. But how 4D is trying to zone in on each of the members as they're dying. And man, and Plagueis was even experimenting in that moment. It was he had to kill them out of necessity, but also he was like testing each person as he killed them. Like, I wonder if this will work. I wonder if I could bring this guy back to life for a few minutes.
Yeah,
and that was wild. So I thought that was interesting that he is at all times using death as just as a science experiment. It's so casual to him. He's like, I guess I got to kill all these guys. Might as well run a few tests while I'm doing it.
Yeah,
he truly has main character syndrome.
Main character syndrome.
Tenebris is
truly like.
I mean, his name's on the book.
I know, but I mean, like just even how he acts.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh no, everybody's an NPC.
Yeah,
I'm the main character.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I think it's a testament to his it's a testament to his power, right? That in this scene, one would think that he would be worried for his life, but he's just messing around with these people, just conducting experiments on the fly. It's just a straight up testament to how powerful Plagueis is at this point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, his collection alone of just, beings from planets, whether sentient or non-sentient, like he's studying. It's interesting how it's so scientific because he mentions that Tenebris was also very scientific, but he wasn't scientific in the Force. He wanted to do like this gene splicing, and that was kind of how the Bith operate. But Plagueis is like, I'm going to study this, but I'm going to learn it from the perspective of the Force. Like I'm studying this with the lens of the midichlorians and how the Force operates and the light and the dark and the balance, and is balance even truly, something to submit to like the Jedi? And he's like, no, it's just, I DM'd Retney like a week or two ago, and I was like, we were talking just about how the way he speaks about the Force and the dichotomy of the light and the dark side. And, at one point he mentions, I'm jumping ahead, but it still applies throughout the whole book of like, he mentions like a glacier versus a volcano and water and fire, and how a glacier just covers things up where a volcano creates new ground. And that's like the dichotomy. You got to credit James Luceno. Like the way he writes, it first didn't click with me, but as I've read, I'm like, I really, really like the verbiage and just how he's describing these things, not only from Plagueis' perspective, but from 11-4D and from Palpatine, etc.
The perspective switches he does are really fascinating. They all feel unique, which I think is a tough thing to do as a writer. That's something that I notice in shows and stuff, is that, I could tell all these people are written by the same guy. And I don't really feel that way here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really neat. One thing about, I tried to find a quote. I don't remember where it's at, but it's in chapter 4. He mentions how like the midichlorians are almost aware before someone dies.
Like they know they're going to die before it even happens.
Yeah. Even before the perpetrator does anything. And so that's really fascinating to me, that all this info about the midichlorians being translators, and I just thought that was really, really interesting.
Didn't he say something about like they leave before the person dies or something
No,
like that?
because he
They-
watches and
They don't leave. They like
Interesting.
prepare for it or something.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like they know when they're about to die that it's like they've already started heading for the door.
Yeah.
You know?
They've started packing their bags. They're like, all right.
when Tenebris was dying, he watches them.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Mm,
Yeah.
He does that with so many, I mean, like Cole said, so many different beings. It's very fascinating. I mean, the fact alone, and I mean, not too far ahead, but I'm jumping a little bit ahead of, like, you know, when he does meet Venomous and immediately he wipes the floor with Venomous after a little bit of a scuffle, and then he just throws him the flower and he's like, eat this, I'm gonna study you. I'm gonna study your midichlorians. And,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
decade later,
Brutal.
he's still studying him in a comatose state. Like that is some evil scientist stuff, but in the lens of the Force, it's so unique in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where that quote that I was talking about earlier about not using fear, it happens right there on the last page of the future of the Sith no longer hinges on physical prowess, but on political cunning. The new
Yeah.
Sith will rule less by brute force than by means of instilling fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I just circled that, and it says right here, I was like, incredible, how honorable for a Sith. Like,
Yeah.
just of
Yeah.
like how he's like, oh, I will tell you how this is going to work in your death. Like, you are now no longer a part of this, but I will at least let you in on what's going on behind the curtain. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, well, you know, it's just very interesting how he engages in information between the other characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something
Super
very
nice.
similar to that later on when we jump ahead to 52 or 54 BBY and they've been training for about a decade. They're going through these kind of rituals, and there's that one planet that they go to where there's these tribalistic native indigenous people that they have no way of getting off this planet, but like every sporadic
Yeah.
amount of years the Sith show up and it's become like almost a religion, like a rite of passage for them. And
Yeah.
and they quote, I believe Palpatine quotes Bane, or maybe Plagueis quotes one of the other Sith, and they're talking about how like it's not their goal to just take lives who don't deserve to live, is how they quote it, which is still kind of an evil, like a really evil statement in and of itself. But it's like I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically they only do it when it's necessary. So they only kill
Right.
that one guy, and then they Kali Ma him, but then they eat the heart. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
yo,
Wild. Yeah.
it's insane. I was like, okay, this is because they the have it highlighted again. I'm sorry for jumping ahead way after chapter 4, and I knew this was going to happen, but
it's
that's
all good.
okay.
So we're just vibing.
We're just vibing, bro. But like he says, like we're not giants, so we must become beasts. Like,
Yeah.
because Palpatine is like, are we grand enough? And he's like, the question is, are we crude enough? And I'm like, ugh.
He also says that thing about like we are not butchers to
Yes.
Palpatine, and that's like the exact same thing.
It's so good, man.
I had
I
a real quick
feel
thing.
a disturbance
sorry.
in the Force. I feel a
Oh.
disturbance in the Force.
Oh,
Where is he? Is he in here? What are we doing?
I don't feel anything.
yeah. No, say it went.
Oh,
must be-
you know
went
why?
cold.
It's because there he is.
Oh,
Hello.
What's going on?
I brought someone with me for
Oh
Seth.
no.
Look, he's here.
there he is.
Master Qui-Gon.
Come to
I
Hawks.
am a good character.
Oh. The best from what I hear.
I was just in the
Ready?
middle of. I have all the boxes behind me. I was like messing with my hot toys because I just moved, so I'm like putting everything
That's
on
crazy.
display.
Seth will never be able to live it down.
One
man.
video, and now you're for life.
It's
I mean, that's
fine.
like the first thing I ever saw was the reel of him saying how Qui-Gon is not cool, and I was like, dude, there's no way.
Wow.
And you're still here,
Mhm.
even still.
I'm picturing Maul going like, unfortunately, history will not see it that way.
That's so
Um,
funny. Well, hey, we're glad to hear, man.
Yeah,
on the
no.
100K.
Oh, thank you so much. It's
Bro, he's-
crazy, but no, I've been
he's hitting
excited to
500
just
this year.
talk about Darth Plagueis. This is my favorite Star Wars book. I think this book is like the best Star Wars book ever. Out of all the ones I've read, at least.
It's on track to be mine, and I think it's people always joke, they're like, oh, it's rated R Star Wars, and I was like, I don't know about that, and then I'm reading it and I'm like,
There are moments
I was
where,
wrong.
like the mist of the blue blood, filling the air and all that. I'm like, well, all right,
Yeah.
it's a choice.
I was gonna.
with what you guys were talking about earlier with that planet, like that's straight out of like Predator, where there's indigenous tribe and then aliens coming down and killing the hunters and then leaving, hoping maybe their technology will get better
Just
so
for
they
the
can fight them
sport.
better.
Well, Plagueis here, because I remembered this. He specifically says, "Execute 1, terrify 1,000," which
Yes.
I just thought was such like a profound line.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like he says that they're not trying to instill something of fear, but he's talking about basically how just one act affects generations.
And I mean, Palpatine does that in the original trilogy. Destroys Alderaan, executes 1, terrifies the entire galaxy. It's insane. I mean, a little more than 1. He took some liberties with the 1 there.
It's all
referring to an
semantics.
entire planet. But yeah, it's wild. It is-
Execute a marginalized one.
Yeah, right. So I had this quote. It's jumping forward to chapter 5, but which chapter 5 I just enjoyed. There was a lot of reference to like midichlorian transfer, and I liked how Plagueis had a little dig at it seemed like a little dig at Dark Empire, and now Rise of Skywalker by extension, about like putting your bodies in clones. Like that's not real immortality. We're not about that. I just thought that was interesting. But this quote. Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned something even similarly with Darth Vitiate or Emperor Vitiate, however you want to go, where he's like, he lived for like 1,000 years, but he was so focused on, he wasn't focused on living long. He was focused on being in power. And Plagueis is like, I'm not about that. I'm trying to live long.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine. This quote at the end of chapter 5, talking about Tenebrus's Twi'lek Master. I thought this was super cool, about how Tenebrus's Twi'lek Master had opened a small rend in the fabric of the Force, allowing the dark side to be felt by the Jedi Order for the first time in 800 years. That had been the inauguration, the commencement of the revenge of the Sith.
He said the thing.
I highlighted that too, and I was like, they said the thing. They said
I
the
know.
thing.
Well, it's not even. I mean, yeah, that part's fun, but it adds some weight to the title. Like that title had a purpose behind it. The
It just
Revenge of the Sith.
It made me wonder, like, what he was specifically doing, like, what happened there to kind of create that rift.
Mm-hmm.
Was he trying to like send out like a flare of the dark side?
I wondered
or was
that
he trying
too.
to pop the bubble of? Because I think I remember it being described as like Plagueis describes it as like a light side bubble that Tenebrus's master kind of rips through. So I'm wondering if that was the goal or if it was an unintentional. Hey, it was like, wait, what was that?
They mention it. I mean, in the more recent chapters that we just finished up, like they brought it back again, and I had forgotten that quote, Connor. So I'm super glad you brought it back up because I was like, they mentioned that, and I don't remember what happened. But yeah, he's like, it weakened the bubble of the Jedi, or at least burst it, as or vice versa, I should say.
Like kind of Last Jedi vibes, the light and then the dark rose to meet it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's kind of what. And I was like, oh, okay.
There has been an awakening.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way that they, like, how they perceive that, where, like, they acknowledge that, but they also know, like, we're going to take control of the Force and we're going to make it not that way anymore. Like, the dark always precedes the light, or has always preceded the light, is what he says. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, that's such a Sith mindset to have.
Yeah. I mean, they mentioned it a few times.
Do you know what the Twi'lek Master's name is?
I looked it up just now. He doesn't have one.
Not off the top of my head.
Well, no, because so I looked it up like a ton of times, and every time I look, it's like this is something that like they've never named this master for some
I feel
reason.
like I feel like they did that, like I don't know, a lot.
Because it was Bane, and then after Bane, it starts with Z or something. Xana.
His apprentice was Xana.
But then, like within that lineage, there's just this unnamed Twi'lek master who was the one who's like revealed themselves to the Jedi, and then like they're but we don't know what their name is. It's like,
all right, hot take. I mean, not a hot take. Interesting take that would be cool. What if that character if they wanted to connect it, they probably won't. I'm getting
Is
my hopes
Harrison
up.
Dula?
Yeah.
No way.
No, what if that Twi'lek master was a character in the Acolyte? And I know that's canon, like that's not, and but Plagueis exists, and we know this. There's things that they've brought in, right? And I'm like, with the Acolyte timeline, that makes sense. That's like roughly 100 years before. It would line
200,
up.
200, I think.
Is it 200?
I thought it was 2. I could be wrong. Is it 1 or
I
2?
thought it was 100.
What?
Oh, well, maybe
I
I'm
think-
just crazy. I thought it was.
You mean the Acolyte? How far before?
Yeah.
It's like
From
100
what I
years
understood, the
before
High
Venom.
the High Republic is 200 years, and it's the end of the High Republic, so it's 100 years before.
For some reason, I remember 150. I feel like I remember seeing things say it was like 150.
Maybe they don't
175.
even
Do I hear
know.
175?
No, you guys are right. It's 100.
Really?
Approximately 100 years before. That's what Wikipedia says.
Touchdown.
I don't know.
Right. I do. I do remember that because I remember I said something about it once, and I tweeted or something like, "Yeah, it's 100 years," and someone was like, "Actually, it's 132 BBY because they explicitly said it's 100 years before the Phantom Menace." And I was like, "Okay, bro, you got me by 32 years."
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it is.
You don't gotta
it's
get that
100 years
specific.
Before the Phantom Menace. So we could probably. I mean, I think we should see Plagueis in it. I think it'd be a missed opportunity not to.
the thing is like you'd have to tread the lines, because then if he is shown in that, like, he can't fight any Jedi. Like, that's,
No, yeah.
they could make him do that, but it would
Of
kind
course
of
they could.
Yeah.
they could undermine what happens in the Phantom Menace, with Maul and with
Right.
Palpatine, and in my head I'm like, that's when the Jedi are aware of the Sith. The Sith are back. The only
Well-
way is if Plagueis could kill them, and they never catch a trace of it. But even then,
Yeah.
that's
Well, what if they what if the Acolyte, because she's a former Jedi, right? I think that's part of the synopsis we know. The titular character,
Oh, really?
she joins Plagueis. Maybe they could tell a version of these first few chapters before Palpatine, and he takes on this kind of first apprentice, and it doesn't really work out or something. I don't know.
Or it's just like a long game of him trying to basically get her to clean up these messes, and then he gets rid of her at the end.
Oh yeah, because there is that. I think it's. I don't remember what chapter it's in, but one of the people that he goes after, he kind of manipulates him into fighting those Jedi, knowing he
the
will die.
Nautilin guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
He's like,
maybe
"Prove
it's,
yourself
maybe it's a
worthy."
situation like that. I don't know.
Back to the book, he does that a lot, where like
Yeah.
whether he's, I'm sure in that case, if he did kill the Nautilin did kill those Jedi, he probably would have taken him on as an apprentice. But it was almost kind of like Plagueis knew, like, this guy's not gonna kill these Jedi, like, go die, But it's interesting, and he does that a lot, even with the manipulations of Palpatine, where he conjures this half true and half not story of what happened with him and his siblings and this genetic disease that he has, and then that is something that, like, he uses that to kind of push Palpatine, and Palpatine is eventually like, is that even true? And he's like, sorts,
some of it.
like,
Kind of.
and you
From
never
a certain
know.
point of view.
I was just
Exactly.
about to say it.
and that's like the genius of Plagueis, is just little moments like that where he's like, and it blends or bleeds over to Palpatine, where it's like they might have a goal in mind, but they can, even if it doesn't plan out exactly the way it's meant to, they can always twist it to kind of redirect the way they want to.
Yeah.
Very true.
I think because like as a longtime fan of Star Wars, as we all are, one of Palpatine's most identifiable traits is how the guy always has a plan about something. He's always planning something, and this book really just makes you realize, oh, that guy's his master. That's most definitely where he got it from, because like Plagueis is always like doing some ulterior thing.
Yeah.
So that's just so interesting.
Which, speaking of him doing things for ulterior motives, how about him setting up Boonta Eve? He was a big part of that. Man, that's one good thing. I think that was just a really charitable thing of Plagueis to do. Setting up the
Boonta
pod
Eve
racing on
Plastic, sponsored by
Tatooine.
Hago Damask.
I had it like I was. That was so. I don't want to say goofy. That's not the right word, but it just came out of nowhere for me. I was like, no way. Plagueis helped organize the pod racing on Tatooine. That's wild.
Yeah, I actually love. So for context, I'm a huge criminal underworld lover. Like when it comes to, Black Sun and Pike Syndicate, and now we've got the different clans of the Hutts. I eat that stuff up. So the idea that like Plagueis is both playing the sides of not necessarily politician, but influencing different politicians, and also merging that with the criminal underworld and just the corruption that's within the politics of all these different systems is really cool. And the fact that, he's like, yeah, like I'm not a politician, but Palpatine can be, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you will be the Supreme Chancellor. And even with Ars Varuna, he doesn't want Bontepalo to be the king. He wants Ars Varuna to be the king because he knows he can twist that.
I also think it's really interesting that Palpatine is the one that comes up with the idea to turn the Jedi, or to turn the Republic against the Jedi to like make them an enemy. And like just that specific scene of them just kind of throwing ideas at a whiteboard, even basically just like, oh, I wonder if we did it like this. And Plagueis is like, yeah, it's interesting. I think that's good. But also in that same scene, I really like how Palpatine he says something along the lines of, I will make sure that you will be remembered as Plagueis the Wise. And Plagueis like smiles and he's like, I like that.
He says like, you flatter me.
Yeah. Some tension in that scene.
In the annals of Sith history, you will be known as Plagueis the Wise. Plagueis quirked a cunning smile. You flatter me.
I mean, I picked up on that as well. I was like, when they first meet, it's like in a weird, like, I mean, not in a romantic way, but they do almost like kind of flirt with their. Yeah, they like flirt in a weird way.
It was odd. But also fitting. Because it was
also,
like these characters are. Yeah, it was interesting.
I was like chuckling to myself with the visual of Palpatine like riding a motorcycle with little Plagueis in the sidecar. I'm imagining like the Indiana Jones style motorcycle. So I like pictured like Plagueis holding on, or like just holding onto his knees,
like Hagrid and Harry Potter.
Yeah,
big aviation goggles.
Well, it's extra funny too because mutants are supposed to be like super tall and skinny, and like it. I think doesn't the book mention how like it looks so weird when Plagueis fights? Like it says something like, can't imagine how it looked to them or whatever when he like slaughters the Wobegon crew because it's just this giant like Sith Lord and stuff. So then imagine him in a speeder or something like all like that is pretty funny.
Yeah,
Darth Plagueis the Wise subjected to a small sidecar.
Also the idea of Palpatine just being like a racer enthusiast in general is kind of funny to me, but it also kind of it rhymes with Anakin as well, of like, they have a little common out. I like to think that in the Clone Wars we don't see it, but like when he goes to hang out with Palpatine, they just talk about like, speeders and stuff a little bit, and he's like, this Palpatine guy, I kind of like him,
Well, it made me have this thought that I was like, did Palpatine ever lose that love? Like what if like as a celebration, he's like, I'm gonna give a gift to myself. All the Jedi are wiped out. I'm gonna go race. Like ribbon shred, nerf herders, like speeds off.
That needs to be a Robot Chicken skit so bad, dude.
Yo, I don't mean to interrupt, but did you guys see this dude Chuck in the chat?
Yeah,
I was ignoring him.
I called him out. He called me a Ray Boy in a Disney show. That Ray Boy hashtag is really funny.
You've really brought the. Thank you for doing that. I was literally just saying that. Yeah, I mean, you brought out the some of the weeds when you put out your thing, but like, I mean, wait, I know that's a side tangent, but like, it's respectable. Anyway,
well, dude,
that's a whole different thing.
I don't know how active you guys are on.
You just have to be respectful. That's
yeah,
all.
bro, just be a normal person. Like, I don't know how active you guys are on Twitter, but Star Wars Twitter has been going crazy for the last few days.
I had to stop after Obi-Wan.
With Will's bestie and stuff, I've been going crazy and everything.
Yeah.
What did Tony do?
Tony's not here right now. I'm talking about your other bestie.
Yeah, it's just listen. Regarding the Acolyte stuff, like, yes, it is known that Leslie Headland said some things that people didn't quite like, but let's just stop. Let's stop that. All right, can we be normal people, like Retney said?
Yeah, dude, the show's not even out yet.
I said it the other day
and what does the Acolyte have to do with Ray?
Yeah, it's like talking to Tony about it. I said I was like, I will never shut down. Like, as a Star Wars fan, which Twitter is very interested in what being a Star Wars fan actually means over the past couple of days. But as a Star Wars fan, I will never shut down a Star Wars project before I actually see it, because there's no point. Like, you can't tell if you like something before it comes out. Everybody's going to be pissed about the Acolyte, and then it comes out, and what if it's fantastic? But it's just people to engage in their own expectations. However, I do want to say this, though. We were thinking about Plagueis being on that little motor car thing. Not only is it funny about that, he's so big. Think about him in crowds. Like, he's always like sifting around and being like, ooh, he's hidden and he's got his hood on. He's so much bigger than everybody else. Everybody's probably like, who is that guy?
I wonder what the average height is for like immune. Like,
It's like 7 feet tall at least.
I'm just thinking about him in line with the like the cult leader lady, and they're all like this. It probably looked like a heartbeat monitor where they're all like around the same height, and then he's just super tall in the middle. So
according to Wikipedia, the average height is 1.9 meters, which is 6'2".
Oh,
Okay.
So all of these dudes could be in the NBA.
Wow. According to Reddit, which debatable and how valid that is, but it says Plagueis is 7 feet tall. I don't know where they're gathering this information.
I mean, I'm sure he is.
They
do say
6'2". How short is his body and how long is his head?
I don't know. It does say that they have elongated heads with hairless and smooth craniums.
Yeah.
Nice. He's like 5 foot flat, and then his head is 1.5 feet.
I found this out while I was reading. I was like, what do the Munes look like what do I think Plagueis looks like, right? And they obviously describe it. We see a Mune in the prequels, and I was like, okay, he probably just looks like that guy. But then I found this out recently, that in the Clone Wars, they look different. They have noses. They don't have
the 2003 ones?
No, in the Clone Wars.
They have noses in the 2003 ones too.
Really?
Yeah,
you're right,
like,
they do.
When Obi-Wan fights Dirge, all the Munes there have noses.
Oh
yeah.
I don't remember. I don't even remember Munes showing up in 2008 Clone Wars. When do they?
When they go to the banking clan. It's the stuff with like God, what's the guy that Anakin beats up?
Oh, Will, is it the episodes that I skip?
That's right.
Is it the episodes that I always skip over when I watch the Clone Wars?
You guys are talking about like quality entertainment.
No, you guys are talking about the ones where like Jar Jar pretends to be a Jedi for 3 episodes or something.
No,
I skipped those.
It's an arc where Dooku basically gets Rush Clovis to be the head of the banking clan, and then that's like a very long-winded way for Palpatine to get control of the banks, and at the end he's like, "Long live the banks," which is like I actually thought it was really well done. But
it also includes one of my favorite Anakin moments from that show, which is when he beats the crap out of Clovis. Clovis is like, "Oh, you're such a coward using all of your Jedi weapons and your Jedi abilities." And he's like, "Okay," throws his lightsaber and just beats him with his bare hands. And
I remember that.
To the side, being like, "Hey,
okay, there they are."
That's wild.
Weird.
Yeah, I didn't.
It's weird. That. They can't decide what they look like. I don't think. I sent this to Cole. If I can find the picture.
Yeah.
I made a joke and I was like the Chad Plagueis versus the Virgin Plagueis.
Handsome Squidward.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find the picture.
Is it the photo of him with the 2 lightsabers? That's the one I always think of, where he's like this. It's like the Plagueis art. Yeah. And the background is all red. Yeah, I was looking at that earlier because for me, when I listen to the audiobook and read, but every once in a while I'm like, all right, I got to figure out what this guy looks like venomous and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just so funny to me that he is the same species as the band in the cantina, like the
Bith.
Yeah, I know.
But that one of them as a Sith Lord is so funny to me. But I mean, I don't know.
2 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it's funny that Plagueis actually remarks on that. He's like, of course he would choose another Bith to be his successor.
Yeah.
Tenebris was so conceited. Of course he would.
A man in his own image.
Bro, Chuck beat his ban. How did this man come back? Somehow Chuck returned.
Oh, I put him in timeout, but his timeout is permanent now.
Oh my
Chuck,
gosh,
go
man.
watch someone else.
Have fun in the
Yeah,
corner.
there's plenty. There are.
Reddy's got no chill. He's like, I've
Well,
been dealing with
dude,
these
I
guys
mean,
for days.
It's just so crazy. Like, I tweeted one thing just being completely neutral about Rey, like trying to make a good point, and then I tweeted a few more things about Rey, and I got all these people going crazy just talking about like all I tweeted was that I think both Anakin destroying flying an N1 and stuff and all that, I said that's ridiculous, and then Rey beating Kylo is also ridiculous, but they're both ridiculous. Like, you can look at both of them and be like, yeah, this is outlandish. And all these people were just like, well, actually, Anakin was shown pod racing and he's an expert mechanic, and I was like, okay, yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, you see Rey fighting with a staff, and that lightsaber literally calls to her like it has a connection and stuff, and people were like, no, that's not true. Like, whatever. So I'm just getting tired of it, bro. I just want everyone, if you're like, there's grifter content creators out there. There's dudes who literally all they do is spread negativity. Go watch them. Like, why are you even here? Why are you even here with us if you're just going to talk about Disney like that?
Redney, my guy, all you're doing is just
Will, can I
pulling out
share my
those
screen
weeds
real
in your fan base,
Yeah, and then one of them was in here, man. Chuck.
Get out of here, Chuck.
Yeah, Darth Chuck over here.
I'm gonna share this real quick. You see this?
Redney's at the end of his fuse.
Oh,
right
that
now.
was
I really
that was,
am, dude.
That was Tenebrous' master, Darth Chuck.
Darth Chuck, dude. Even on
That's the
Wikipedia, it
Twi-
wouldn't
that's the
say. It wouldn't
Twi'lek.
say. Yeah, it wouldn't say his master's name. It just said a Sith Lord that ripped a hole in the Force.
I'm
Twi'lek.
just starting to. I just kind of want a headcanon that like Tenebrous is just like, yeah, he's a nobody. I don't even want to talk about him. Like, he just didn't tell him his name.
Well,
I think that's funny because that's kind of what like Sidious did about Plagueis. Like,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
would barely tell his apprentices anything about Plagueis.
Yeah.
And there's that whole thing of it's like maybe it's in one of the chapters where Plagueis is going through his like trials out there, and Plagueis is just annihilating Palpatine out there, just crawling like so injured and no food, no water. He says something along the lines of like, that's how these teachings are supposed to be, not in a holocron, but between the two of us. And Palpatine quotes something from a holocron, and he goes, oh, you're talking about blah blah blah, and they like kind of have that thing of trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
you know this guy. They're like name dropping holocrons and like different research. It's just funny that's
It's
because
like,
it's literally the same thing.
It's like Aslan when he's like, "Do not recite the ancient magic to me. I was there when it was written."
Yeah.
Banger line. By
I think
the way.
just specifically, it's really funny in that
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson.
It was Qui-Gon in lion
Qui-Gon.
form.
Oh no!
It's
There he
Aslan!
is.
Watch out, Seth.
Qui-Gon is actually an Animorph, and he just transforms into Aslan.
Yeah. I wonder how
That
close I
actually-
can get this thing with being
That actually
focused.
makes two characters that have taken lion forms in different respects. Because we've got didn't James
Ooh.
Earl Jones do Mufasa?
He's Mufasa.
right?
Yeah, he moved.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
The
That's
lion
crazy.
verse.
It be that way. The Star Wars lion verse.
But no, now I'm just thinking about how like that
Are
entire
we talking about this book?
Yeah. Let's get back on track.
that just got me thinking about how like that entire sequence, Plagueis is like, you're gonna want to kill me by the end of this, and then just how many years later he's like, oh great heavens, he killed me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
great heavens.
Yeah. Trying to find more of my favorite moments. It's hard. It's hard to go like not hard, but it's like so much has happened. So like putting yourself back in the go ahead, Seth.
I was just gonna say, let's talk about Force lightning.
Dude,
'Cause that's a cool moment.
that was a cool
Yeah.
moment.
We should
When
talk
he-
about that.
When are you talking about the part where he like lights the grass on fire and he talks
Yes,
about
he
how
starts
yeah.
talking about it.
And then that
Talk-
girl, that Itachi female.
Yeah.
That does
He
she ever get a
boils
name?
her blood.
Yeah, that was, dude. Actually, I highlighted that. I want to read her.
Do it, man.
Please.
Yeah, she
give me just a second.
dies, and then he's
He
immediately
holds her
like, oh, what
hands,
happened?
right? Like he
Like, oh,
holds
what
her hands like she's gonna read his future or whatever. And but like I don't remember how it's described in the book, but like lightning doesn't go like all over her, right? Because the crowd doesn't know what happened. It's like he does it only internally.
Yeah.
It's more like the
Which
He
is-
does
that's
it like
awesome.
He does it like a handshake, like Joker's buzzer
Yeah.
from Batman the Animated Series.
Grayson,
I think I found it.
Grayson, there it is. There's our example. That's what Palpatine does to Starkiller at the end of Force Unleashed. That's
Oh.
because we were questioning like, okay, well, how does he die from this explosion without any like anything happening to his body? And I was like, well, what if he just sent a bunch of energy through him, like with the
Into it,
Force
yeah.
lightning? And
That's
I was like,
cool.
wait, that's maybe that's what happened.
I think that's a power that only works in book form, because how are you going to show that on screen?
Yeah.
Through
I found that monologue that she gives. She paced on the slab, almost as if speaking to herself. I see worlds subjugated and worlds destroyed, and from the chaos a new order is born, buttressed by the ferocious weapons, the like of which haven't been seen in more than 1,000 years. A galaxy brought under the yoke of a ruthless despot who serves the forces of entropy. And finally, I have seen that only those hardened by the ineluctable truth can survive. She scanned the audience. Only those of you who are willing to turn upon one another and profit from the misfortunes of others. Wild. I mean, it's like dead on to what happens.
Yeah,
There's
she just.
so much foreshadowing.
I mean, imagine just having that much prophetical ability.
Right.
Yeah. I do love right after that though, like he infuses her with the lightning, her blood boils, her hands heat up, she dies, and then he says something like, once the light goes out of her, she falls. He holds him and he's just like, I don't know, she fainted. And everybody's like, what happened?
What
And
happened?
He goes, they fainted. And then everybody's like, they fainted. And they like all in unison just agree that happened. And then he leaves while they all go nuts. It's just very funny how like he immediately takes over this like little event and nobody remembers what actually happens. He murders her and then just leaves.
Well,
Yeah.
it honestly left me a little disconcerted because the way that it's described is that everyone was so like confused and distraught that no one was leaving. And so Plagueis like gets on this transport and leaves to basically like what it's described as like all these people aimlessly wandering into the woods, like, you know, who are inevitably going to lose their minds.
Yeah.
Um,
On the speeder bus.
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
so he
when
takes it back alone?
He was the
Yeah,
only
he
one
does.
to board the speeder bus. Those he had arrived with and the selected who had built shelters above the lakes were running into the dark as if determined to lose themselves in the wastes.
How are you just pulling up the pages so fast?
Because I got them notarized.
You
Mr.
guys,
Holocron.
when me and Will did a stream talking about Luke, I was like, yeah, you know, I got some notes or whatever. Like I had like this. And this dude pulls up with a full ass notebook, like, oh yeah, Mark Hamill said this in 1994, and I was like, dude,
I take everybody's time very seriously. and
Yeah.
if I'm going to be invited to be on here, I want to at least do my part because my brain goes so far in other directions that like I at least have. If I don't write notes for myself, I'll be talking about like toys from the 90s and like this. So
and I was like, oh,
keeps
do you
myself
remember?
on track.
Yeah, I was like, do you remember that one thing George Lucas said? And he's like, oh, yeah. Oh, Tony said I took his spot. Tony's in the chat. He said I took
Tony.
his spot.
Return of the King, Star Wars Sith.
Oh,
Where is
look,
Tony?
crazy,
What's
man.
Tony doing? Is
the
he camping
lore
out
is-
at a convention or something?
The lore is he ate an entire Christmas tree and he's dealing with that. No, he had to work because he works
Love
in
lore.
retail and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
We were talking about that because I used to work in sneaker retail.
Oh man,
But guys, this is a good segue. I got to jump off because I have dinner plans. But
I got you.
Mr. 100K here just got jump out.
I really wish I could stay longer. Maybe on the next one when you guys do. Is it the next one the finale?
It'll be the last chapters.
Should
yeah, I
be,
think so.
Second half.
Because we're
Alright.
we're at halfway right now.
Bro, Tony said he's stuck at work. Yeah, but thank you guys for having me on here. I will not take up any more of the stream. I will catch all of you guys later.
Thanks for stopping in, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Be
I'll see
sure
you
to
guys
keep
later.
the stream open while you're at dinner so you can
And-
fact check us for stuff.
And we will see you, Seth.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Seth is gonna wake up with Qui-Gon just hovering above him, like one of
Yeah.
the ghosts of Christmas past or something.
I
Like,
loved how just an offhanded comment has turned into this whole thing. That's so
I
funny.
should have never said anything.
Seth, you're also the only one of us right now who could actually do the Qui-Gon haircut with like the pony in the back, and you could legit do it.
Good.
Search your
cosplay.
feelings. You know it to be true.
Yeah.
If Beyond the Dune Sea gets to 50K subs next year, Seth will go to a convention dressed as Qui-Gon Jinn.
He said it. He
There
said
we
it.
go. Yep.
Dude, Seth, that's awesome, dude.
No
I'm so
way.
excited for you.
Guys, we got to get him to 50K.
I-
Seth, thanks so
Wow.
much for making that. That's going to be awesome, dude. I can't wait.
Yeah. Here's
If
10
when
years
they make it to
that happens.
50K,
that's-
we will all go to the exact same convention, all of us dressed as Qui-Gon.
He's just speechless over there. He's like, I don't even
So
know.
anyway, Force lightning. Guys, I really like the whole comment about that you like have to experience Force lightning to actually do Force lightning.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It makes me intrigued. Then someone like Starkiller, how did he learn lightning? Vader can't use Force lightning.
He just throws him in a reactor shaft.
It's interesting. Maybe that's why Starkiller's Force lightning is so chaotic.
It's
I mean,
true.
it could also be like from a certain point of view, right? That like Plagueis believes that the true way to be able to demonstrate the power of Force lightning is by experiencing it yourself.
Well, we talk about like his honor, right? It's kind of like tasers. Like, well,
Yeah.
okay, in order to carry one, you gotta be tased.
Yeah.
Like pepper spray and stuff. Yeah.
So maybe it's something like that.
Yeah.
I
like how
I had a quote kind of bouncing off Grayson earlier, mentioned how it almost felt, or was it Grayson? Did you mention how it kind of felt a little romantic, their first meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like this quote here after Plagueis meets Palpatine for the first time and he's hanging out with Pax team. And he says, "Have you picked a winner, Magister?" Pax team asked after two pod racers ripped past the viewing stands. Lost in his thoughts about Naboo, Plagueis says, "I believe I have." I think that James Lucino is writing this intentionally to be like this dark mirror to almost a romantic partnership. Like obviously it's not a romantic partnership, but he's writing it as if like these people who are so twisted, Plagueis is so twisted, you would never picture him having a wife or anything, but he has this like close connection with another person. And it's like, you could almost see this in a rom-com, where somebody is in like hanging out with their friends and someone says,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, have you picked a winner?" Exact same thing. You could picture this like at a homecoming game. One of their friends is like, "Oh, who do you think's like? Do we have a winner?" And they're like, I think we do. And then it just lost in the thought. I don't know. That's the vibe I got. I just thought it was so fascinating.
That's my favorite moment in the rom-com when one of them tells the other, I remember that one time I killed my whole family. Maybe you should do that too.
It's weird, right? It's like a dark twist on it. I don't know. That's what I thought. Or are you gonna say?
And Andrew, I also got it's the HyperX Quadcast if that's the mic that you have.
Andrew, when are you starting to do some of this stuff, man? Get on, on Tony's podcast or something on a stream, bro. You got Andrew. He's like, I love Andrew. He has some of
He's
the
a
most.
homie.
He's
the best.
homie.
He's
a
always
homie.
in chat. Really good dude. Seth, to go back to your how they learn Force lightning and all that. Two things. One, because this is now Legends, I think that as much as I love this style of them having to be, like you said about the taser, you got to be tased to have a taser. Rey does not. And she just kind of uses it when she blows up the does she get Force lightning before that?
No, but he does
Yes,
say
she
something
does.
about how
Doesn't she get?
she
shot by
does
Snoke?
in Last Jedi.
Yeah, Snoke shocks her, doesn't he?
Yep.
No, he doesn't.
Or does he shock
He
Kylo?
shocks Kylo Ren.
He shocks Kylo Ren.
Oh, you're
Okay.
right. Well, but the thing is though, is the Jedi, she says that, or Plagueis says that the Jedi can emulate it, but it's not true Sith lightning. That's
Well,
not
That's electric judgment.
I thought he was talking about Force Judgment.
I think
Yeah.
we're getting a little hung up on this, though. I think that Plagueis' whole point was more about honor. Like, hey, if you're going to truly use this,
Yeah.
like, I don't think it's like a power transfer thing. It's like, well, you can't do it unless you physically cannot do it unless you've been shocked. At least that's not the way I interpret
It's
it.
the Karate Kid thing of you got to be able to use a broom well before you use your sword, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
clean stuff up before you can actually punch people. It's that rite of passage deal.
And maybe it's like to go back to the taser analogy, that whole point is so that you know how bad it hurts. So only use it when necessary. Maybe on the flip side of that, Plagueis is like, feel how awful this is and use that. Like, you really want to torture these people when you use Force Lightning. Maybe it's to get your headspace more into what you're actually doing when you use Force Lightning. It's like, hey, this isn't like a lightsaber cut where you cauterize the wound and it hurts for 5 seconds or whatever. This is this is an intense burning. And so when you feel it, you can recall on that hatred when you use it to someone else.
Yeah. It's that fun thing of like, we all love Star Wars, where like a genetic thing and a mystic fantasy thing intertwine, and you try and figure out like, well, Palpatine is Rey's grandfather, so that makes sense why. But Dooku can use Force Lightning because he was angry. Like, it's that thing of it's just
it gets a little muddy. Yeah,
it's kind of just Star Wars, you know.
Yeah,
I also Plagueis also, and I take not a lot of things that he says with a grain of salt, but like Plagueis is a very theatrical person. And he's also, like he goes on a lot of long monologues about the Force, and it could just be him being a little pretentious of be like, yeah, you can use your Sith lightning, but it's not like
right.
You won't be able to feel the true power of Sith lightning. And he may not mean that literally. He just means that in more of an egotistical way of like, one must experience the lightning before they deal the lightning. I don't know. Like,
I think like at this point, it's just like Plagueis' teaching style, right? Because he does the same thing for Force Choke. He chokes Palpatine as well when he's regaling a story about choking, about like making it seem as if someone was poisoned at dinner.
So good.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's really just his teaching style.
One thing that while listening to this stuff earlier, I do wanted to point out is with Plagueis, he's always bested by somebody else when he feels like self-conscious about himself, which is very interesting. Like when Plagueis has the idea, or Palpatine has the idea of, the Jedi need to be infiltrated from the inside. He almost like is taken aback. He's like, what? Like, you were able to have an idea? It's my destiny to take all this down, and you had a great idea, which is supposed to help me. Maybe you have the idea and you give it to me. It's like always, or with Venomous, where it's like, how could Tenebris have even had an apprentice? Were they being trained at the same time? Does he have the same destiny as me, that he questions his own destiny with the Force, which obviously it's not. He, like Cole said earlier, he's just the bridge to Palpatine. It's just always very cool how like smart he is and how intelligent he is and how planned out he is, but he's always stopped immediately in his tracks by somebody else who just makes him feel a little bit self-conscious about what he's doing. He's just very emotional, which is the way of the Sith,
Main character.
Yeah, I think I think it really just makes him question, because I mean he's the kind of character that plans out everything. And so when there is an outlier of info that he didn't anticipate, or he didn't think about, he didn't expect, he's like, well, hold on, why didn't I think of this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting insight into him.
Might just be a problem with the Sith in general. Is, I mean, Connor, Seth, you guys have said this on your show before, that like Palpatine's demise, that he couldn't see past himself or see the possibility that that Luke could ever join his father and stay on the light side, right? Like, why would anybody do that? And it's like, that's the flaw of being so consumed by the dark side.
It's a flaw of evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's the fatal flaw of evil.
Yeah, I think that's what Plagueis...
Which is what makes Plagueis so dangerous. And it's that I don't think that he is evil for evil's sake, which Palpatine kind of is. So...
It seems like... Yeah.
I just think that Plagueis might have been a more terrifying ruler of the galaxy in that way, that just because I think that he would anticipate a Force like Vader sort of turning. But like we mentioned earlier, ultimately his downfall was always going to be from inside, because there's not another Plagueis.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if Plagueis would have let Luke, like, even interact with Luke or Leia. He would have tried to probably keep them as far away as possible.
Yeah, he probably would. That's a good point. That's interesting. If Plagueis was Vader's master, I think as soon as Plagueis finds out about Luke, he goes and just caps him. Like, nah, you're not getting involved in my plan.
I mean,
you don't think he'd use him as another pawn?
No, I don't think so. Not if he preferred Vader. Either that or he kills Vader and just goes after Luke. But I don't think he lets them both exist simultaneously.
And he really didn't like branches. He just cut them off before they the possibility of somebody having the ability to do something like that. He just immediately ends them. Which I think
whereas Palpatine was more of like a leader of opportunity. He periodically like, oh, Maul's the guy, and then Maul gets cut in half. Okay, well, there's this boy that just happened to be here. He's pretty cool. I guess that we'll watch your career with great interest.
While also doing all of that with Dooku at the same time.
Exactly.
Like,
so
he's just letting that flow.
He's always like, that is Palpatine's ultimate strength, I think, is his ability to just game the situation. What were you going to say? Sorry, I cut you off.
It's gone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Seth lost it.
Yeah. I don't remember. What were you saying before that? Oh, do you think Plagueis knows about Maul?
At this point?
Yeah.
No, not at this point.
You think what? Sidious is just hiding him?
For now.
I think
we'll see as we go forward. Do you think he knows about him?
Well, my whole thing is like you said that he'd go kill Luke. Yeah. Why isn't he gone and killed Maul?
My point is like I don't think that when Plagueis finds out about Luke,
he just immediately do it.
Like if you swap places, if you swap Plagueis with Palpatine, I think that once they know either he kills Luke or he kills Vader.
Okay.
So here's
like a what if,
interesting thing then, and I don't know if the book alludes to it, so I don't maybe this is more of a hypothetical or rhetorical question, but like Plagueis is obviously his goal is to prolong and extend his life, but also the step-by-step process is to create life. That's what Palpatine says in Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Plagueis might end up being the reason why Anakin was created?
Oh yeah, I've been in that camp for forever. I think Palp's kind of like there's that in the Vader comic. It's kind of implied.
Yeah,
that is what happened because you have Palpatine like surrounding Shmi in like
that one panel created so much contention and controversy.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that was the theory before. It just kind of added fuel to the fire.
Yeah. So
are you saying more that maybe it was Palpatine that did it, or that it was Plagueis that did it and Palpatine manipulated it?
I think they both were doing it.
Yeah,
I think that they both were like, at least that's always been my thought, is like they both were doing like some Sith alchemy together.
You guys know that it was originally in the original draft.
I know it was in the original Revenge of the Sith
was
draft,
Plagueis.
Yes. Because he has a twist on the "I am your father" line.
Yeah,
in the original Revenge of the Sith draft.
What is this from? I've never heard about this.
Here, I'll look it up.
Because it's in the original Revenge of the Sith draft.
Seth, you don't think so?
Palpatine basically reveals himself as like Anakin's father.
I'm your daddy.
I got it.
I'm your daddy.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Send it in our private chat. I want to see it.
Yeah. Should I pull it up? Should I just pull it up?
Oh yeah, there you go. Just pull it up.
My Kindle. Oh, I got it.
So, a Sith manipulated the midichlorians to create Anakin Skywalker. This is it. Anakin Skywalker was born, suggests that a super Sith manipulated the midichlorians to create the chosen one. Anakin's birth would have been orchestrated by a Sith that was powerful enough to use the midichlorians to control life and death. Such a theory links one of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, most important scenes. In early Revenge of the Sith draft, Palpatine confirmed that Plagueis used the midichlorians to start the cell division that created Anakin Skywalker.
But
do you have the actual one?
The link? This link? You mean?
No. Here, I'm going to try to find the actual because, like, I think that the actual draft.
Oh, you want
out there?
If you have the draft, please.
Did you know that Connor made Star Wars? I'm just kidding.
He just goes. He's here. You want to see the? You
thought it was George Lucas, but it was actually Connor. He was using it.
Wow, what? Don't give me that stolen valor like that.
Connor actually manipulated the cells in George Lucas to create Star Wars. That's how this happened. He's the Plagueis. George Lucas is.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Connor?
Right, what were you saying, Seth? Go ahead.
there's a reason why it's in a draft.
Well, I know, I
Not-
get that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think, but other things imply upon deleted scenes. Like you could consider that like a deleted scene, right?
I mean, George
right.
would have made it so.
So
I know. I think that that's the fun of it. I think George removed it so that it's always a mystery. It's kind of like Yoda's species. Like, how does why does Anakin have a Andrew? What a comment. I'm sorry, that distracted me. I just saw
Connor,
that.
it's your fault.
no way.
He did it.
Thought we were bros. Come on now.
Oh,
Yeah, I
man.
mean, it still is a draft, but at the same time, like it's still a mystery. So we don't know how
yeah.
this happens.
And
I
things
think
are
it
brought
should
in from
still-
drafts all the time with like
yeah,
even today.
I think it should still be said for something that at the very least, the thought of Plagueis using midichlorians to create life is still in the movie.
Yeah.
So that
I
idea
think
is
it's
still
just
there.
it's just meant to be like an allusion to it.
This is the
Yeah.
George Lucas-y
Which
quote.
I like that it's not. We don't know for sure
Yeah.
because it is weird that I'm just.
That's the
messing
thing
with
about
you,
the
Andrew.
Force
It's
is
all
I don't
right.
think everything should ever be fully explained.
Yeah, like not everything needs to be explained. Some things can just be left up to interpretation. Like we have some pieces there, but ultimately it's up to us to figure out why this is, or just think about it. So I think it makes it more interesting.
When
Yeah.
asked about this, George said, it's left up to the audience to decide.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it has no relationship to how he dies. So it's like, it doesn't really change the Chosen One prophecy, how it started. It's just that it was
Yeah.
fulfilled is the main part of Star Wars. So
Well,
that's
it's
George just being George.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
but we're still even with the Force in general, we're still feeling the effects and the sentiment of that today. Like when Ahsoka came out, right? The dilemma of was what she experienced with Anakin in the World Between Worlds, was that real, right? And it's like, well, it doesn't matter because it was real to her. Like it's that quote Dumbledore when he mentioned to Harry when he said,
Is it of course it's all inside your head, but why should that mean that it's not real?
Exactly. Yeah.
so
No, I mean that's. I think any story. I think if a story spoon feeds you the information just verbatim and gives you no room for interpretation, then
Yeah.
that's super boring. I like
mean-
that everybody here, like Seth has one view of it. I have another view of it. You guys have other views on it, and that's. I mean,
is that
that's what breeds the discussion.
In
Yeah.
this, when George is asked about it, so like I just pulled up the quote on here because I'm not going through this whole thing right now. But when Paul Duncan interviews him in this book, that's when he gives the quote about like it doesn't really matter to the story how he starts, so leave it up to the audience. But it's also like that thing pointed out where Lucas was also possibly going to change it if he ever did his sequels, where in this book he refers to Leia as eventually going to be the chosen one, like all of that, where so him saying it doesn't it shouldn't be defined, kind of like Yoda's species. I would put it in that same realm of like we don't know what Yoda is, and it's kind of that mystery of Star Wars where we're not supposed to know what he is. You're not supposed to know how Anakin was created because it changes the Chosen One story, but then it's also like George is going to change the Chosen One thing later on, being that it was going to be Leia, who was the actual Chosen One to bring balance to the Force. So he was always like ready
I mean,
for the
at the end
next
of the
thing
day-
that he drops and works with. So you could go off of those all day.
And at the end of the day, it's all from a certain point of view thing too. It's just it's just meant to. We're all meant to take in different interpretations, and mystery is great. It's great
Yeah.
to have a little mystery.
mean,
in it. Like
it's
it's fun to
half the-
speculate.
Yeah, it's half the reason why I enjoy reading this so much is because it's like, we've talked about this before where, and I have friends that think about this, where as soon as Disney bought Star Wars and Legends and the EU was subsequently wiped away for, in extreme terms, but still, it's like, okay, well, when that happened, I was like, well, none of the Legends stuff matters anymore, right? Like, I only should focus on the canon content and the canon books and comics, and it's like nothing else matters. And it's like, now that we're reading this, I'm like, there is so much, like 95% of this fits still into the current canon. I mean, this was written in 2011 when Clone Wars was going on, like the mention of Mother Talzin and the allusion to Savage Opress, super cool. So what I was going to say about that is like, it's up from a certain point of view, and we can gather a lot of really cool information and theories and just expand our knowledge in Star Wars from reading these legend stories. And it be like, hey, like in my, I feel like there's a difference between head canon and like what is your Star Wars, but it's like
100%.
Yeah, like headcanon is like kind of ignoring certain things. A lot of people, they ignore the sequels or whatever. Or we were Connor, Seth, you guys talked about this when it comes to 03 Clone Wars versus 08 Clone Wars, right? Like, does it still fit, right? And you can make it fit, but at the end of the day, like, it doesn't ultimately matter, because you can still choose to integrate this in the way. And even if it does contradict something, that doesn't mean that it's just completely invalid, right?
Right.
Like, Star Wars has existed so much longer before Disney purchased it that it's not like, oh, well, none of this matters anymore. Like, that's the beauty of us going through this book. And I'm eating it up. I'm like, man, I want to read more Legend stuff. Even if it isn't 100% applicable and it's still 80% applicable. Hey, that's cool stuff that is fun to talk about.
That's something that like the 08 Clone Wars discussion with Seth and I helped me realize was like, don't get so hung up on canon sometimes,
Correct.
like this is all just, and I always go back to the Sam Witwer quote. I know, Will, you're a big fan of it too. It's like, these are all just tall tales, It's all just tall tales. We're just having fun. And I kind of look at books like this, like they're apocryphal. They can inform stories in the canon, or the canon can inform from stories in the Apocrypha, but that's the fun thing about them being apocryphal. They're not always going to line up 100%. And some of them you can kind of just ignore if you don't really like Splinters of the Mind's Eye. We always clown on here, and,
never ignore that one.
It's so good.
But I think it's like,
it's also that thing of like, Dave has said it in multiple interviews where Filoni himself has said nothing is canon except for the shows and the movies. And until a book is brought into either a Clone Wars or a Tales of the Jedi style animation, or brought into a live action series, it's nothing. And at least according to him, where there are so many books that are like the Ahsoka thing. That Ahsoka book was canon until it wasn't with Tales of the Jedi, which is it's just he goes back and he changes stuff, and it's kind of the same way that George was too. I mean, there's that interview with George where there's so many interviews of him during the Clone Wars of like him sitting around that round table, and just the same thing with the Sam Witwer quote of, it's all different campfires. In this story, Ahsoka's lightsaber is blue. In this story, Ahsoka's lightsaber is green, and that's okay. So it's like, would I love everything to be consistent? It would make it a lot easier some of the time, but it just adds to that charm of Star Wars, I think.
The mythology.
And it gives people like us something to talk about where we thoroughly enjoy trying to connect the dots.
Alan here has a great point, what's up, Alan? It's good to see you in here. He says, what other series, stories, or movies work with or within canon? It's only something I hear from Star Wars. That's a good point. Like, you don't really hear this when it comes to Marvel. You're more the comic book guy, so you could tell us, like, with Marvel and DC, there's tons of Elseworld stories, right?
Most of it is like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's a mainline 616, but there's tons of times artists or writers get to write their own thing.
Yeah.
Or this is happening kind of over here. Or because it doesn't make any sense. Wolverine's a really key person to look at because he's part of every team all at once.
Yeah.
And it's like, how could he be doing all these things? He can't be here and there, but this isn't the 60s anymore.
So do you ever hear, being in the comic book world so much, do you ever hear people kind of have these same disputes like in Star Wars where it's like, but this one doesn't fit in canon, so it doesn't count? Or is it just, no, it's just a fun story?
I think that with comics, it's a lot easier to just go, well, I like this Batman. Because, like, when you move different writers or you move different artists, it's just easier for your brain to just go, let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I think that Star Wars is unique, that it's this, Star Wars has become a franchise like comic books. I mean, it has comic books in it, but I mean like a franchise that's so vast, but it's unique in the way that, at least up until relatively recently, it has been helmed by one dude who was kind of overseeing everything. And now we're in a place where we are getting all of these different voices. And I think that that's hard to adjust. Maybe that's why you have people who are so hung up on like, no, this is canon, this isn't canon. And that's, I was one of those guys. So I'm sort of phasing out of that. It was a phase. That's all it was.
Yeah.
It's like for Spider-Man, if everybody was like, "Oh, it's only canon up until Stan Lee stopped," like Stan Lee's, that's the only canon Spider-Man. It's like, well, no, people are more, and I think comics did that to themselves. Of up until in Marvel, up until Spider-Man was in the Fantastic Four, nobody knew that it was all the same realm.
Mm-hmm.
So like, them having interconnected stories, everybody was like, whoa, okay, so this is all happening at the same time. And then you see Spider-Man hang out with the X-Men, and he's just a young kid with a teenage super team. So I think it's that thing where for Star Wars, people cling to it so much of what's canon and what's not. And Star Wars is also this thing of like, it is a super specific group of fans where everybody wants what they like to be what's canon.
Yeah.
And I think there's less of a group of people who are open to maybe the thing that is officially canon isn't exactly the thing that I like, regardless of whether you think it's canon or not. So it's that openness that I think is a little bit different when you look at a Star Wars fan versus a comics fan.
I do think it's frustrating because I think that Star Wars has the ability to make things canon, like, because the stories are still small enough. Like, it's not like Marvel and DC where everything is so vast. And Disney had a chance to be like, okay, we're going to just keep this all canon and everything. But I feel like that they've just, it's lost its, it's far away now and they can't even control it anymore. And I think that, I guess before Disney, it was getting a little crazy where like things weren't exactly connecting and everything like that. But now it's just the cart's off the rails.
And then you look at the books too, like with Legends, like you look at something like Dark Empire and Heir to the Empire, and you're like, well, what, these things contradict each other. And there's even that thing of Timothy Zahn, like at one point, I forget which book it is, writing Mara Jade after Dark Empire, making fun of Luke for what happened in Dark Empire as kind of like a shot to the guy who wrote Dark Empire. As like, oh, you really turned bad and you wore that big cloak, and like making fun of him for it, almost like making fun of the entire story. So it's not like it's exclusive to Star Wars, because it does kind of have that thing of like, oh, this happens over here, the campfire scenario. I just think with Star Wars, like Seth said, it could very much be that way, like in comics. It's just, it's very hard for people to go in that direction, especially now.
This is the last thing I'll say about it. So, how much do you guys know about comics?
I know a good bit.
Okay, so like the Ultimate Universe in Marvel.
Exactly.
So
correct.
Early 2000s, everything's really connected. There's only like 5 books. Like that's what Star Wars reminds me of, where it's like, we only have 6 movies. We have these couple TV shows. We could connect it all together. No, we can't. Nope, we lost it. It's gone. Bye. And I think that's what people just really want. And I think that's what people get frustrated. And even though that there was some bumps in the road, they could recover. But I think at this point, everyone's just like, forget it. I don't even care. Just burn it all.
Do you think that Star Wars, do you guys think that Star Wars is unique in that their fan base lacks kind of an ability to have forgiveness? Because I follow some Spider-Man forums, and from what I understand, the current Spider-Man run.
Zeb Wells?
Yeah. So, but I don't hear anybody be like, "Oh, Spider-Man's ruined. It's like this."
It always comes back around.
It's been ruined since One More Day.
So, but what I'm saying is like,
can't fix it.
I know. I've heard that that's a bad one. But what I'm saying is like Star Wars fans, they get one bad episode of one thing, and then that's it. The whole thing. The well is poisoned. And it's like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like I watch stuff and I'll read something. They're like, yeah, that wasn't for me, but we'll see on the next one. You know?
It's Star Wars is different too, where like we only have those 3. Like if you really want to talk about like the original 6, we only have those original 6 from George to go off of. Whereas like in comics, how many different retellings of Spider-Man's origin story is there? Like Luke only becomes a Jedi that one way in A New Hope, and the story starts. Whereas like in Marvel movies, it's different from Andrew Garfield to Toby, from Toby to
Edge of Spider-Verse.
exactly.
It's
Like it's all over the
infinite.
place.
Yeah.
So with Star Wars, there's not that and maybe it does change with the World Between Worlds and this new galaxy and all of that stuff. Maybe that's the division they're going into, where they can have an Heir to the Empire story, but also this Heir to the Empire story that's technically canon now. Because that's a great example of pointing to, hey, everybody heralds these 3 books, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, as the original sequels right after original trilogy, and it's actively being changed right now with Ahsoka and Thrawn and Ezra and everything from Rebels. So it's hard to pinpoint because we're being told what's canon as it's coming out, as opposed to 80 years of Spider-Man where it's kind of all over the place all the time.
Yeah. It's
It's
interesting. It's an interesting discussion. But
Yeah.
hey, we kind of should we get back?
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna say is that like with the thing that has helped me appreciate all this with Plagueis and just with these Legends things is really and Alan mentions it here, at least we put it in our tier list, was Star Wars Visions, right? Connor and
Yeah.
Seth did not put that in their tier list, but we did.
Didn't.
And I love Star Wars Visions because the approach of that. I'm not hitting on you guys, by the way. I'm just saying. I'm acknowledging his
guys.
No,
Yeah.
come on.
comment.
Give
I hate you guys. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. But like Visions goes in this approach where every episode is stylistically different. It's written different. It's tonally different. It's action, whatever. It's all different. And it's supposed to be their self-contained stories. And it's like with the Ronin, right? That's one of my favorite,
Yes.
like favorite episodes. It really, that is
that's
sick.
dope.
I'm not
That
even
is sick.
I'm not even a
I didn't know it
Funko
was
Pop
like-
guy anymore.
It's
but
so good, dude.
it's so like those episodes are like the one in season 2 is like Journey to the Dark Head, right? Like stuff like that, where I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, could I maybe fit that in places? And I'm like, it'd probably be kind of hard, but the story still holds up and still has that Star Wars aura to it, right? Like it has, in reference to Journey to the Dark Head, like it has a troubled Jedi character with these Sith, and it's like, oh, there's this whole Sith war going on. What's that about? Doesn't matter right now. And there's a girl who was raised on this monastery and is going to cut off the heads of these things. Like it's cool stuff that I can be like, man, that is really cool Star Wars right there, even though it doesn't fit into anything. Plagueis is a lot easier to fit into things where it's just like, well, I can disregard that line, or even if you don't even have to try to fit it into things. It's just like, oh, that's good Star Wars right there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like again, campfire stories of just who knows,
The last
this
thing
book,
I'll say
yeah.
about it is like, what's different to me about the writing of Star Wars is like a book like this, James Luceno he was being told what kind of the way he had to write the story, as opposed to a comic writer who they have the big pitch meeting at the beginning of the year and they're like, hey, these are the stories we're going to go with. This is the new line of X-Men and this is the X-Men story. And it could be different in a year. We'll never know as fans. But it's that thing of like, I think comic writers are more promoted to change stuff up and like do a different thing because they're always looking for what that thing is. Whereas Star Wars fans, they're confined. That's really the biggest difference there in terms of the writing. I do think though, like your Visions example, and I've said it a million times. Tony and I have talked about it. I've said it
Animation.
like in terms of animation,
Yes.
like they could do the Vision style thing and make all of those Legends fans
Huge.
happy by
Yes.
doing a look. One of my favorite Batman books of all time is The Long Halloween. It doesn't really fit into a lot of Batman lore. Like, yeah, kinda it does, but it's just a really Batman story. They could do a Dark Empire animated series or animated series. You just do 2 movies, you throw it on Disney Plus. All of those fans are going to be happy for it. It's 2D animated. It's right there. Is it
It's a
canon?
layup.
No,
Layup.
but all of those fans are going to watch that and be like, this is fantastic. It's just Star Wars has this thing of like having to force themselves into that corner of what's canon and what's not, and only promoting inside of their canon before they make a giant switch to where their story is going to go. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's all about that DNA, man. I mean, Star Wars has a DNA because it had one creator for the first 6 movies.
Yep.
And It's like one of those things. It's like the uncanny valley. If you deviate from that DNA just even a little bit, that's why you have people who don't like Andor, or don't like Kenobi, or don't like all this other stuff. It's like it's bound to happen because
Sequels.
Yeah, you don't have that.
Ooh.
You don't have the DNA,
Mhm.
or at least you have pieces of it, but
Yeah.
it's never going to be whole because you don't have that original guy doing it.
Yeah.
It's
So I think the Star Wars fans, I mean, I struggle with it too. You just have to accept that, right?
I mean, even when they did have the original guy doing it with the prequels, people were still upset about it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, right? So
Yeah.
I mean,
There, just the way that I see it, like I'm approaching it almost holistically at this point, because I have put aside my rage and contention with stepping out of bounds of whatever a long time ago, because I just realized, I mean, these are stories, right? They're meant to be enjoyed. We shouldn't be taking fantasy and then trying to constrict it into realism, right? I just think that if it is, like, yes, there is an established story. I would prefer if we tried to follow it is for consistency, but there are chances to step out of line and find instances where we can take something like Star Wars Visions, for example, and just take the idea of Star Wars and just have people uh, throw creativity into it. That's why I think, like, for comics, I mean, like, out of all superheroes, I think I follow like Batman comics the most because I love Batman. Um, I can reference things like, oh man, the Long Halloween was really great, and I loved the Killing Joke and all that stuff. And you can think
The
of it
movie,
as a
right?
cohesive story. Um,
dude, don't even get me started there.
you can think of it as a cohesive story, but ultimately you are reminiscing about, oh, that was an amazing Batman tale that was told. So yeah.
I
Connor,
only have
look.
Superman on my shelf. Sorry, guys.
I was trying to do the animated.
Connor, look.
Oh, do we all have Batmans?
I really think we might all have Batman just right.
Yo, that's the best Batman right there.
Yep.
Love
There
him.
he is.
Oh man, that's so
KC
good.
right there, the boy.
Was Grayson going to go get one too? No.
I sadly only have Superman on mine.
You came up Batman-less?
Yeah,
I have. I'm not kidding. Dozens of Batmans in my other room. I have also Nightwing as well.
Sure. That has major my girlfriend goes to another school.
I have a
I'm
Batman,
gonna-
but you can't see it right now. It's in another screen. It's my grandma.
I'm gonna keep him right here.
My most prized
Batman
Batman is my
Yeah.
is my Batman Beyond figure. I'm a big Batman Beyond.
Oh, you're a Batman Beyond guy, huh?
I love regular Batman too, but Batman Beyond was like my childhood. Anyway,
Anyway,
Darth
but
Plagueis.
So okay, in chapter hold on.
Guys, it's really off
11.
the rails, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we'll just wrap it up. We were on chapter 10 is the last thing we talked about, so there's only a couple more left.
I'm just kind of going through some of my
Yeah,
favorite
we just-
quotes and
Just
stuff.
fly through it. Yeah, here, I'll read one. How about this? Plagueis extended his left hand to touch him on the crown of the head. Then it is done. From this day forward, the truth of you now and forevermore will be Sidious.
We haven't even talked about like the brutality of
Oh, I
and the
know.
conflict of him
Yeah.
killing his family. Like,
No, that's kind of what I was going to lead into with that.
Yeah.
Because that's at the end of that chapter. But
I mean,
see
talk
you,
about
hero.
daddy issues. Like,
Right.
yeah, immediately I was like, oh, they got a rough thing. And I even want to jump back a chapter before of when Plagueis is brought to the Palpatine estate, and they have
What is
that.
that
I mean, so good. Just the way that Plagueis just kind of collapsed back. And basically, I was telling Cole about this line the other day of, he was just like, I always thought the Naboo as a kind and hospitable people, but I guess the Gungans wouldn't agree. And it's
yeah,
like,
that was a line, right? I was
you're like,
Yeah, dude.
"Ooh." And then, but he facilitates the murder of Palpatine's family by proxy with Palpatine. And I mean, Cole, if you want to talk about your absolute favorite moment in the book so far.
Yeah, as of right now, my favorite moment in the book so far is when Palpatine essentially does the same thing that Plagueis does earlier in the book, where he just accepts that this is what is going to happen, to where he basically, he puts his hands on his face and he like looks up into like just into the seeming endless sky in his mind, and he's basically just like, we're all in this now. You know, like he it is a death sentence. Like he basically just says, this is what's going to happen now. I've already gone too far. I've brutalized my father. I've likely just killed a guard. We're all in this now. And then you don't even see it happen. That's how the chapter ends. And the next one begins with it already being done.
Yeah.
And I just think that is, man, just Palpatine's awakening, dude. It's just so sinister. I love it. It's great.
The only visual you get is, I think, the next chapter. When Plagueis is like, when he's starting his training, he's like, go back through when you killed them over and over and over. And he's like talking about, he's like, how he could feel his hands on his mother's throat, but not physically, with the Force. You know, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that's such a cool visualization of using the Force, right? Of like, you know, whether it's a push or a pull, but like the Sith, when they're choking something, it's like in their mind, they are choking that person by the throat with, I mean, you see it the most with Anakin as well, like the aggression that's in his hand of, even when he's choking someone like Padme, like, you know,
you see his hand quiver.
Mm-hmm. Like he's putting all of his, I mean, even Luke, when he tries to lift the X-Wing, right? Like it's like he's lifting an impossibly heavy weight that he was never meant to lift, whereas Yoda is just doing it with ease, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of interesting though, right? It's like Luke was trying to control the Force, whereas Yoda's just letting it flow through him. That's why it's effortless.
And Plagueis mentions it so much about how they're like, they are conquerors of the Force, whereas the Jedi are complacent and they're, I mean, literally, they go with the flow, and he sees that as a weakness, whereas the Jedi see that as a strength.
He says, we stalk the Force like hunters rather than surrender like prey to its enigmatic whims. Which is, I mean, Plagueis' view on the Force is very interesting. And his training with Palpatine, like, brutal. We talked about it earlier about, like, the eating of the heart and bringing him to that cold planet, Magito, right? It takes him to Magito, and it's like, if you were used to a cold world, I'd bring you to a desert planet, you know, to here.
Yeah.
And his whole goal is just to make him feel uncomfortable and just to torture him.
Later on, in the same vein, because, you know, we get the time jump right after that, Palpatine mentions when they first started their training that Plagueis asked about the things that he cares about, his wishes, his desires, his fears, so that he could give a counter to all of that. He'll take away whatever you cherish. He'll instill you with your fear so that you no longer fear it. Like, I mean, he is not pulling any punches at all.
Yeah. And how about when they're talking about Force lightning here in chapter 13? And Sidious asks, will I eventually be physically transformed into some aged, pale-skinned, raspy-voiced, yellow-eyed monster? Such as the one you... Oh, this is what Plagueis says. Such as the one you see before you. Plagueis gestured to himself. A little on the nose, but it's
unlimited
fun
power.
moment.
Can we... I'm sorry, we completely... We failed to mention... I don't want to like jump ahead, but there's something that we got to go back to because we did not get into the specifics of it, and that is Plagueis' origin. His
childhood.
Yeah, his like almost Tom Riddle-esque origin of, you know,
I got that too. Yeah, Tom Riddle.
Yeah, Ego Damask. Yeah, like, I mean, the fact that he like used the Force to tell a kid to jump out of a window, I was like, all right.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And the idea that it was Tenebrous all along with, like, you know, he bumped into Plagueis' father, or Damask the First, and then got one of his acolytes who wasn't strong enough in the Force to basically seduce and marry him so that they could have a child that was powerful enough in the Force. Like, that is,
again, a scientific approach to the Force.
They said using Bith magic to determine that their child would be strong in the Force.
Yeah. So cool.
It's almost like the precursor to what we were talking about with, did they make Anakin or not? Like, he literally made that offspring. It was almost like the test run to do it in the only way that they knew how before being able to do it with the midichlorians.
Yeah. It's the, I mean, it really, you got to give credit to the Sith. It really is that building blocks of like getting subsequently better and better, and we're going to become stronger and stronger, and we're going to work out the kinks as it goes on, literally step by step by step.
When you look at it that way, it really seems like Palpatine is the monkey wrench in the whole thing. Yeah, like everything was so deliberate, and then they just happen to meet, And Plagueis is like, all right, well, I guess this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about if Plagueis would have not found Palpatine and then brought Anakin in as his apprentice, like how the galaxy would be different and if there would ever have been a redemption.
Well, see, Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say he needs that figurehead in the Senate.
Yeah.
So, do you think anybody offered that? They're
Well,
gonna
no.
take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that whole just you place the forbidden fruit in front of you.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if like that was the will of the Force to put, like if you look at the will of the Force almost like a godlike figure, bringing in Palpatine is like, hey, the galaxy is going to suffer for a little bit, but this is ultimately to bring about the end of the Sith. Like the dawn is darkest just before the dawn.
He says like the galaxy needs to go back to a more like barbaric age so that people would be willing to like he's almost encouraging stirring the pot in a way.
Yeah.
Which was
that's what Luthen actually says in Andor.
Yep.
Like we need the galaxy to experience, like they're trying to go to the Empire into being more brutal so that the galaxy will see what a problem it is. So
that's true.
Like poetry, guys.
It rhymes.
Luthen is Plagueis.
Wow. Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Well, we still have to uncover the mystery of why Luthen has a kyber crystal necklace, but
Would you guys be surprised? No, I'm not going to get into that. That's a different thing.
Seth's so excited.
Season 2.
What if Qui-Gon appears in Andor season 2? Seth?
He probably will. I
Let's
think he's
go.
confirmed.
Yeah, I think Liam Neeson is confirmed to be in it.
All of
Best
season
show
2
ever.
of Andor is Qui-Gon as a Force ghost. Speaking of
class Star
Andor,
Wars.
though, this is something I wanted to bring up because we are missing our resident Andor fan. Tony is not here at the moment. We all know how much Tony loves Andor. I'm being facetious for anybody in chat. Tony really does not like it.
He hates it.
I enjoyed Andor. I know, like Grayson and Cole, you guys really enjoyed it. Seth and Connor, I know you guys really enjoyed it.
He doesn't like it.
I know. That's why Qui-Gon's going to be in it, and then you're going to like it.
Oh.
Just like Kenobi.
Yeah, exactly. Cassian Andor should have been in Kenobi. What I was gonna say was there are so many points in this book where it takes so long before we see a humanoid, like a human. It's a million species all interacting. Everybody's got dialogue. There's so many different species characters. Bothan. There's so many all the time. Droids. And not to make this about Andor, but in season 2 of Andor, I would just love a little bit more aliens, because something like this where it's like aliens all talking and interacting, and then it takes forever just to see a human walking by. It's like, hey, Andor, where are all the aliens at? You know what I mean? It was just something I thought of while listening to it. I'm like, man, we haven't seen a human in a while. And then I think of something like Andor, and it's all humans, you know?
Yeah.
That's interesting,
I mean,
isn't it? Yeah.
It's actually, this is going to be a weird thing. This book reminds me a lot of Andor, and the fact that it is
very
slow,
political.
It's very political. It's much more of a slow burn. Obviously, you know, there is a divide, and for people who love Andor or don't like it, or people like Tony who absolutely hate it. But Plagueis is like, you know, people revere this book, but I've always viewed Andor as, I'm like, it kind of paces itself more like a book, which is maybe, and I like slower paced things, but Plagueis is like, it is that the slow political nature. The one thing that I will say with Andor is that, like, I was also a little bit bothered by the aliens thing. Cole made a good point that, you know, there's also barely like any aliens in Empire Strikes Back. So other than like creatures.
Because the Emperor, man. He's
Boss.
I was about to say, I mean, that's the
Boss.
thing is the background bounty hunters, the Ugnaughts, and
Wampa.
Wampa.
that's not a
Tauntaun?
those are creatures. Those are not nonsense. Those are like,
Well, is
Anyway.
Wampa a creature, or is he actually thinking of things?
all the
like
rebels
point
you
of
see
view
He has
are
of
feelings.
humans. The entire main cast, except for Chewbacca and Yoda, are humans. It's
Yeah.
like you don't see a single alien except for the Ugnaughts on Bespin. It's not like I
Bro,
think
you
like
guys, you just went through a whole litany of characters. You're like, other than Yoda, other than Chewbacca, other than the Ugnaughts,
Okay, if
other
Andor
than,
had
other than
like
all
a
of those
Chewbacca
guys.
well,
or a
here's the thing,
Yoda,
like,
where
are
it's
you
like that's the only one, it would be okay. But Andor doesn't even have that. It's like a background guy, and you're like, is that an alien over there?
I think like
2 tubes.
Yeah.
I don't
Or
know.
the giant dude from the first couple episodes.
I just think it's a very interesting critique. I feel like at this point it's just kind of like grasping for reasons to be mad at it. But that's
Yeah,
like
no,
another
yeah,
Whoa,
yeah,
it's,
sure,
it's
for
one
sure.
of my only critiques.
I will
show.
say,
Yeah.
like, what's his face? Is it Melchi and Cassian are literally saved by aliens. So on
That's true.
that one,
Yeah.
from their prison thing, that's the only one that comes to mind. Again, it's been a while, but I digress. I always viewed the restructuring of the galaxy as like Palpatine does not like alien creatures. Maybe ties into his Naboo blood a little bit. And I've always been like, well, it makes sense. Like, why would I don't think he wants aliens in the Senate. You know, like I don't even think he wants anybody in the Senate. He disbands it in A New Hope. You know,
Don't they
so
say
like
something about that when he's talking about when Plagueis says to him, he's like, you have to do it because I'm and he's like, you're a human, so the Senate would rather have you in there because of their like speciesism.
Yeah, he said that the Senate would only allow a human to assume the chancellorship.
And that's when he says the thing about working behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, in terms of the scale of the galaxy, the human species is like predominantly like the largest and most expansive species.
Mhm.
So there's most of them there. Actually, Alan makes a good point. There was like that giant dude in the background in the second episode of Andor. So like it's not like there's no aliens. It's just it's predominantly
it's
human.
just sparse. But
Thanks, Alan, and not Connor.
galaxy. What? It's yeah,
Alan,
it's
you're
the
so
way.
smart.
Yeah, Alan.
Not Connor.
You nailed it.
Ooh, I found the quote. Human or not, my knowledge of the dark side will never equal yours. The title, the crown should be yours. No, Plagueis said firmly, it must be you. You have the political skills, and more to the point, you are a human. In this era, only a human is capable of rising to the top of Coruscant's biased political heap.
Mhm.
Super
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's true.
But do you think that
It's-
might just be because he's a mun, not just because he's an alien?
What do you mean?
Like Plagueis.
It's just
No.
because he's
It's
a
like
weird
there's that like
guy.
stigma.
Stigma against the banking claim.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
possible.
That's
Ooh.
interesting. Like he's too insecure to say that it's just him as a species. He's
Yeah.
like, no, it's all aliens. That's an interesting idea.
I mean, that
I
goes
don't know.
back to what Will said earlier of like his insecurities in the matter. Like I think if he wanted to, Plagueis could be the chancellor. Like if he really set his mind to it. But I think that's like he's like, nah, that's not for me. I think he'd rather like just kind of puppet someone to be that. He even says in the last few chapters, he's like, you'll become the chancellor, and then you'll elect me as co-chancellor.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it's which feels like such a things that aren't gonna happen. Like you know, but it's like he was. I think it's as time goes on, he realized how much political cunning that Palpatine has. He's like I don't know if I can fully just have him there alone. He's like, yeah, just make me co-chancellor, I guess. Like, okay, buddy. Like that's not even
Yeah, I do like how even he says, but even then I will advise only in the secret from behind your throne, because after Palpatine, because Plagueis is not in the sequels or the prequels or anything, Palpatine kind of does both jobs for himself, where like he's the puppet master behind the scenes, just like Plagueis said he wanted to do, but he was also the face. So he's both the Plagueis and the Sidious and the
Jekyll and Hyde.
Palpatine at that point, which is
That's
kind of
interesting.
cool how he filled in both of those roles as one person.
Because isn't that true that like Palpatine was really just kind of hanging out, and like Masamata was like Haley, like doing the day-to-day stuff?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's potentially possible because, as we found out, Plagueis was essentially trying to raise a partner and not an apprentice.
Yes.
And so Palpatine got to the point where like he was like, "Dude, I don't need you, man. I don't
Yep.
need you." So
Plagueis let him get a little too far.
Yeah. I do think that's the big thing though with Plagueis, how we talk about his insecurities, is like Plagueis starts to and as I read the book, so you kind of figure that out. Plagueis starts to feel like Palpatine doesn't need him anymore. And that's kind of the whole thing where like Palpatine's realizing it at the same time that Plagueis is, because the Sith are always thinking of one another. He says it to Venomous before he feeds him the flower. He's like, and Venomous is like, well, I can become your apprentice. And he's like, I will always be worried that you would take me down. And it would never be that way, which to your point of he's looking for a partner as opposed to a master apprentice sort of deal. It's somebody not to surpass him in rank, but to meet him there so they can work on it together as a team. But once Palpatine realizes he can just end him, it's over from there. And Star Wars then.
What's kind of interesting too is Sidious kind of says that to Vader. Only together we can discover.
Yeah.
It'll be a partnership.
That is
but
one
then you
thing
lose
that-
your legs.
But even
And the
Palpatine,
wham.
Palpatine, I think Plagueis is being genuine though. Like he genuinely wants a partner, whereas Palpatine is just doing it to manipulate Vader. He's like, "You're never going to surpass me."
That's with all of his pawns in general. He never lets them get far enough to surpass him. Whether it's Maul, whether it's Dooku, it's Ventress underneath. If it's the Inquisitorius, like he's just like, you got to keep them like down here. It's why they squabble and they're petty and like he makes Vader think he's his partner. He's like, "What's wrong, my friend?" But in actuality, he's like, "You're my pawn. You are my muscle."
Sucks. He's always doing that kind of stuff. Like,
Well, I have to ask you guys this question real fast. I don't want to get too off topic, even though, at this point, why not? But like this part always bothers me, or it doesn't bother me, but it makes me think. Like when Yoda faces off against Palpatine in Episode 3, Palpatine specifically says, "You will not stop me. Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us."
yeah.
So what is he saying there? Like, is he like, I've always thought that Palpatine's like, not planning for anyone to ever supplant him. But why is he saying like Darth Vader's going to become more powerful than even me?
I think it's
like
like
what he's saying is that if Yoda could even beat Palpatine, it doesn't matter. Vader will beat Yoda.
Yeah, that's probably true. He's like, even if you get past me,
like we've already won.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's also like a dig at Yoda, where like you lost Anakin, and now he is Vader. He will be more powerful now that I am in charge of him versus when you had him.
Yes,
it's getting in Yoda's head, really. I mean,
I
Yoda's
always thought. Cole, that's a great point. I've always thought that quote was really interesting because I've always felt that prior to Vader losing on Mustafar, Palpatine did kind of like him, like genuinely, like he did.
Like, that's like a favorite pet kind of thing, almost. Or as a friend, dude.
Even as a friend, and I think that he was just so disappointed when he lost to Obi-Wan that he's like, "Well, I guess you're just gonna be my monster now, and that's gonna be it." But man, that is a great. I think Will's right though. It's just to get in Yoda's head, like
I think in the Vader comic as well. I believe like I don't know verbatim, but he essentially says something to Vader, something along the lines of you had so much potential, but getting to that point is impossible now because you've lost so much. So
I think that Palpatine was just kind of content at that point because he's like, "I won.
Yeah,
you're still powerful enough to do everything I need you to do. So whatever." And it's not till Luke comes. I think that's another part of Palpatine's fatal flaw here is like when Luke comes around, he's like, "Well, here's another opportunity to kind of right this wrong." When he should have just left it alone.
It's the same thing in Kenobi too, where he tells Vader, he's like, "Dude, we won. Stop chasing after him. Doesn't even matter."
Yeah. You seem agitated, my friend.
where if he had actually
great scene.
You stop.
Encouraged him to keep going after him, who knows what would have happened.
It's my favorite scene.
Yeah, I know it's your favorite scene. You hush.
Does it? Yeah, Palpatine looks so good there, doesn't he?
I know.
Doesn't he look amazing?
Grayson, do not. Don't. He'll just go off an entire.
Yes, do it, Seth. Betray your friend.
He looks in that scene as he does in the scene that he's put into in Empire Strikes Back.
The monkey eyes or whatever they call them.
Yeah.
I don't know why he just kind of looks like a potato in that special edition of Empire. or
He
no,
looks-
like when they add him into the hologram.
Oh yeah.
It's just because he doesn't move. He like literally like it's just his eyes and his.
I don't know
mouth.
why.
really
It's just
weird.
like his makeup in that scene. It makes him look so wide. I'm like, did Palpatine
It
like
does.
gain some weight in that period of time?
He would have just been
Um,
shoving donuts, bro.
yeah.
That's so funny.
So I think we about covered everything, didn't we?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I mean, yeah, I think there's not much other like the major beats that I
Seth,
wanted
you
to
don't have to
talk
raise your
about.
hand.
I-
Just talk.
Seth, you
talking.
have something to say?
I thought it was kind of cool that he
give him
brought
the
the
screen.
Celestials. Because like,
Yeah.
he had
What
that
does he mean
offhand
by
thing,
that?
So that's like the mother and the son and the brother
Okay.
and the sister and the
So
father.
the Mortis gods.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Well,
Yeah.
like
Was that
they're-
even out yet?
It was.
Well,
I knew
Yeah,
Lucas-
2011.
So it came out in 11. Well, I know we talked about this several weeks ago, but
I
Well,
have
I
the
mean, this
quote
book was-
pulled up as well.
no,
but
not
I
the
think
book. I
it's-
meant when did the Mortis arc? Wasn't that 2012?
they were
I know
working on
Lucas-
this
Lucas-
stuff.
I know Lucasfilm Publishing was aware of it because we had the whole thing with Fate of the Jedi.
Let me pull up the quote for that because I highlighted it as well because we are Mortis FM here. It was very interesting, and it also alludes to some stuff that possibly Balin might be up to in Ahsoka. I mean, again, it's legends and canon, but that stuff is being pulled, and
They're
this was
pulling a
created.
lot of
Like he basically like Plagueis has like a theory. Sorry, I have a lot of highlights. If you can't because it's too bright.
Talks about the
Anyway.
Bendu stuff too.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
He
But
mentions
that-
the Ashla and the Bogan. and
Yeah.
I don't think that the Bindu thing would have been. Was Bindu a thing before Rebels?
No.
I was gonna
the
say
name Bindu was, the character was not.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
for
it was,
example, go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, it was like initially called the Force Bendu, right? And that was where Jolie Bindo's name was based off of. And then they made the Bendu in Star Wars Rebels.
We
Interesting.
can't tell you who that is, Connor, but you'll get there eventually.
Jolie Bindo.
What? Can't tell me what?
Jolie Bindo, you know who that is?
No.
Oh,
Why
should I know
we'll
that?
learn.
Find out.
Are you
In the
playing?
book, you mean?
Are you playing KOTOR?
Oh, that's what you're talking about. I am going to start it soon. I'm finishing up another game first.
Get ready to find one of your favorite.
What game are you playing right now?
Jedis.
While I find
Huh?
this,
I'm playing Chrono Trigger, which is not Star Wars related.
I have heard of
Yo,
that game.
Chrono Trigger is one of the best OSTs of all time.
It does. It's one of the greatest video games of all time. I've just been waiting. I've just been putting it off. But I'm like, I have to play this game.
I'm gonna find it, guys. I promise you, I'm gonna find it. Also,
What?
I love the setups for Phantom Menace with obviously the plasma. Like Duel of the Fates happens when they're like in the plasma mines, which is really
Yep.
cool.
Yo, I didn't make that connection. That's
Right,
cool.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
those
Oh.
plasma. So Darth Maul falls down into the plasma
Huh.
cores of Naboo.
I didn't think about that. That's cool.
And also
Yeah.
the spaceport they built. That was one of their parts of their deal with.
Yeah, I knew that.
Honestly,
yeah.
like the Darth Plagueis book feels like the Rogue One to Phantom Menace.
It's true.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a
It
good way
sets
of
it up
putting it.
so well. I just
Better
I love
done.
it.
But better done.
But better
Well,
done, in my opinion.
Do we have to do this right now?
I'm just saying. Seth, quit being a hater. I think it fits better.
Everybody
That's
putting on their
all.
gloves.
Okay.
Save it. We're covering.
I found the note. It was one of the last ones that I had. I'll just read the full paragraph, even more than what I highlighted. But it said, it had been theorized by Jedi and Sith alike that balance between the light and dark sides was actually under the guidance of a group of discorporate entities, the ones called the Celestials, perhaps, one who merged themselves with the Force thousands of generations earlier and had continued to guide the fate of the galaxy ever since. It implies in this that it was people, that the Mortis gods were people who transcended, and we know that's at least with the mother who debatable if that's something we'll ever see, but that's something that like again, the absence of the father, Balin is standing in the hands of the father. He has black on one side, brown on the other, light and dark. In my mind, Balin is trying to become a Mortis god, and this in this book alludes to that as well.
That's fascinating.
I gotta see more. Gotta see more. So everybody, how do we feel about Plagueis right now? About the book?
Are we
I
excited?
mean, it's all right.
It's all right. Like,
No, I'm digging.
I'm
it.
happy we started on this book.
Because Seth, you have read this book before?
Once. A long
A long time ago. Okay.
Yeah.
In a galaxy,
Galaxy
here or far away?
I'm always in a galaxy far away.
Dude,
So-
can I come hitch a ride, man? Sounds cool. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm on track for this to be one of my favorite Star Wars books. I mean, I've read a handful of canon ones, and the Legends ones that I have read have been, they were when I was younger. They were like YA or not adaptations, but they were like YA books. Like my favorite that comes to mind is the Wrath of Darth Maul, which was a book by a YA book by Ryder Wyndham, which actually connects to this book. I think they came out the same year, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, this, like, in terms of, you know, just as an adult, this book is I mean, it's great, and I'm stoked to finish it off. In the
I
next
wonder
stream.
if that's the book that Sam Witwer is talking about in that interview.
It's
Is it?
not. It's the book that he's referring to is Darth Maul's Shadowhunter.
Ooh,
And he did
okay.
it. And that one, I listened to that one earlier this year. That one is incredible. But it came out in either the 90s or like 2001. It was very like early prequels, and a lot of the stuff with like Dathomir, the whole stuff with Dathomir, Maul refers to him as I'm from Iridonia, right? It's like, well,
Gotcha.
that's not true, you know? So
Yeah.
stuff like that, and like Qui-Gon is referred to being on the council.
Ugh.
Qui-Gon's not on the council. So it's little things like that, and I think, you know, Sam Witwer is like us. He is a fan. He cares about the integrity of the lore, and so probably when he was doing these things, he couldn't help but be like a little bothered, because, you know, he knows these things. And I think that's when he called up Dave, and Dave was like, Sam, it's okay, man. Like, it's okay if the stories are different. It's not the end of the world. Like, these are good things. They just allow us to expand the storytelling further. And man, you gotta love them.
Can I ask the council a question after Seth?
All I was going to say was that earlier in the chat, Quinlan Voss asked about Darth Bane and his death. All I was going to do is answer that question really quick.
Go for
Go
it.
for it.
Darth Bane went into his apprentice and then like lost that mental battle, but some of him remained. So he tried to essence transfer.
They say that in this book as well. I think in some
They
of the
do.
chapters that we read, yeah, they're like,
do.
we don't fully know what happened. Like,
Yeah, because she now has that twitch that Bane had. So some of him remains. Yeah. But anyway,
And
that's
what
the
remains?
last thing. I just wanted to answer that question.
Oh,
I
don't
think I like
worry,
that.
Matt. I won't find it. I'm a huge retro gamer, so no game is too old for me, except for Atari. I'm not a huge Atari guy.
Can I ask you guys this question, because this was something I was confused about on the
Yeah.
second read. When Plagueis is putting Palpatine through his trials out there, Palpatine asks, "How much longer, Master?" And Plagueis deactivated his weapon's crimson blade and scowled. "Perhaps a moment, perhaps an eternity. Stop thinking of the future and anchor yourself in the present." And then literally on the next page, he says, "We are architects of the future." So like, it's just interesting to me how he says you have to be in the present, but his whole thing is trying to teach him to think of the future, which I thought was weird. I didn't know if that was like the point where like he's a Sith and he's supposed to be contradictory, or if I'm thinking of it in the wrong way of like him being in the present is what makes him an architect for the future. It was just a weird, like,
What?
within lines. It was like that, and then you flip the page and it's right there where he says, "We are architects of the future," as almost the way of ending the lesson he's trying to teach him by telling him to be in the present. I don't know. It was just, I don't know if anybody else had a way of
I
explaining
actually had some similar dilemmas with reading that, because Palpatine asks a question and Plagueis asks, or he answers it, and Palpatine's like, "No, not that, answer that." And it's like the answers are flip-flopped, where like the one question he's answering is actually the question that Palpatine ends up asking later. And it's kind of left up to the reader of like, is he talking about like what is Palpatine, like how much longer, what is he asking there? Is he asking how much longer it's going to be till they win? How much longer that he's going to have to endure this pain? How much longer he's going to have to, or that it will be until he becomes an equal with Plagueis? There's so much there, but Let me pull up the thing real quick because I want to read it myself.
That's where he says, "We are not butchers, Sidious, like some Pathsis lords. We are architects of the future." Sidious swallowed and found his voice. How long? Plagueis stood, reigniting the lightsaber as he did so. Not a standard day sooner than a decade.
Maybe
Is
it's like
how
a
that
macro
ends.
micro thing. Like it's like Plagueis before is like, hey, when you're thinking about you, it's on like a you need to worry about now.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
maybe
I
it's
think
like but when we're talking about the grand plan, yeah, you need to be an architect of the future.
oh,
because
maybe that's what it is.
he says
yeah.
here, Sidious continued his gaze at him. I meant how much longer will it take for me to learn?
Yeah,
So there's like kind of a switch in like the context of what they're talking about. But yeah, it is like 3 paragraphs apart.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
one-
literally like the bottom of the page. You flip, and the top of the next page, it says that
You said
next
what I was
line.
gonna say.
Yeah.
I think it's a subjective, like it's a multifaceted thing. Yeah, where it depends. It's situational, I suppose, is what I was trying to say.
It makes you wonder, like, how James Luceno constructed Plagueis's character. Because have you ever looked at like a character board? You like come up with several traits, and like that's how you use the character to interact with situations. So I think clearly one of them is insecurity. It makes you wonder if like maybe something he's contradictory, and he often, because it's like, I don't know if you guys get this, but it almost seems like Plagueis kind of bit off a little more than he could chew. It's like he's super powerful, but he also doesn't. It's like he doesn't really know how to be a mentor to Palpatine, so he's just trying everything all at once and seeing what works. I'm like, yeah, he's really good at the architect of the future stuff, but he like kind of flip flops a lot, and it's just kind of torturing Palpatine. I don't know. He doesn't seem like the best mentor
Well,
in that way.
one character flaw that I have noticed in Plagueis is that despite how much planning he does, he also seems to be like a creature of impulse. He seems like kind of an opportunist. Like Tenebros's death was not planned. He was just like, "Oh, this is a moment that I can kill him," and he kills him. And then Tenebros points out, or I mean, like he does the killing blow that begins Tenebros's death. And Tenebros is like, "You fool! You allowed the ship to get crushed, so now you won't be able to escape." So like that was kind of in that moment where he didn't really think about that. And he also opportunistically just decided to take Palpatine under his wing without like taking too much time to oversee him, So
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's what he means by stop thinking of the future and anchor yourself in the present. Because if he was constantly thinking about how they were going to get off, how they were going to get out of that situation, he wouldn't have taken the opportunity to take Tenebros's life in that present moment because he was anchored where he was. Maybe that's actually, thank you, Cole, because that's like a good example of what I was trying to think of other examples of like when Plagueis was like incredibly in the moment, because it seems like this entire book he's the more architect of the future sort of character. But I guess that's a really good moment of, oh, I can kill him right now sort of deal. So I dig that.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a double entendre. Like there's two different meanings there. Like an architect in the future is a builder in the present. So you have to do things in the moment.
What
in
a
order
line!
to get to where
Just
you
dropping
want.
some wisdom on us, Cole. Man,
Wow.
What can I say? Yeah, I mean, I guess he just he saw the moment it takes Tenebros out, and he was like, well, if I don't do it now, I might never get the chance to. So, and I guess what he's saying to Palpatine is, if you don't, continue climbing, or if you don't continue like crawling, or like whatever I'm having you do right now, only focusing on what the end goal is, you're never going to be able to do what you need to do right now because you're not focused. But also in your efforts of what you are doing in the present, eventually we will get to where we want to be.
I guess Palpatine learns that too when he takes Baby Maul sort of deal of like, because he wasn't going there searching for a baby or searching for an apprentice.
Yeah.
But that kind of is just like gifted upon him of save him, take him. He's very strong with the Force, and he's almost making fun of her the entire time of like, you want me to take this baby? So maybe that's like the lesson that maybe he learned in that point of the next time where, because even Palpatine too, it seems like he's so, Cole, you said it earlier, of like he's so he's such a planner. And like the biggest thing with Palpatine is he's the puppet master. He's the guy with the plan the entire time. So I guess you really don't see other than I guess Vader being chopped into bits of like, well, I guess I got to figure this out now to keep my plan going, sort of deal, rather than just ending it. Maybe that's another background.
I see Palpatine as being both the planner, but also very opportunistic. One of the best examples is in Bad Batch.
That's a great example. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so because they were trying to put that down with Rampart, but then no, they revealed the entire thing to the Senate. Palpatine comes up and is like, "Man, Rampart sucks, doesn't he?"
It's like,
I can't believe that.
Rampart, you knew better. Get him out of here.
This is crazy, though. The craziest part about this isn't that Rampart did it; it's that the clones went along with it. So maybe we need the stormtroopers. And it's like he still got what he wanted, but he played it.
It's just such beautiful Palpatine writing in that respect.
It did, yes.
He does that with Thrawn too, I guess, too, when Thrawn kind of shows up as like, hey, I can help you in the comic where Thrawn's like origin story thing where he shows up and talks to him about Anakin. I guess it's kind of that same thing because Palpatine wasn't looking for a new admiral. He's just like, oh, maybe he can help me down the line. Promote him. And it's kind of that thing. And then Thrawn becomes who Thrawn is now that we see him in Ahsoka. So maybe it's kind of that same thing. Those are some good examples. Thank you.
Yeah, Alan's got a great quote here. The dark side is intrinsically opportunistic.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I mean, like another Palpatine example, I guess, like who could say specifically what he was planning, but like Return of the Jedi, when Luke takes Vader down, he's like, Luke, exactly what I wanted. Like, strike him down, take my side. But if Vader had taken him down, well, I still have a powerful slave. You know what I mean?
He does he does the exact same thing of playing both sides in Rise of Skywalker, where Kylo Ren shows up and he's like kill the girl, and then Rey's just like, oh, take my place. You know, he's whatever outcome happens, he's gonna take it as long as it furthers his.
That's one thing I will defend about that movie is like I think Palpatine is exactly the same way as he is in Rots and stuff. Is that he's like, kill the girl, do that, and then that doesn't work. And he's like, no, I wanted you to be here the whole time. What do you mean? And then, shoot, you guys are a dyad in the Force. He's just always playing both sides, but then taking advantage when he needs to.
What did I say last night? I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but it's so hard not to talk about this book and Palpatine without referencing, the big material that he's in, right? Yeah. And there was something last night that I said, and I remember my first point, but I don't remember my second point, but I said like, I was like, there's two major things, like if that would have helped Rise of Skywalker like a lot. And the first one was that if they had just explained a little bit further on why or how Palpatine came back, and then there was a second reason, which was the bigger reason, and I can't remember what that was.
You can fix most of it by just keeping in the line. When Kylo Ren first meets Palpatine and he says, you're a clone. Palpatine says, more than a clone, less than a man. Yeah. Why get rid of that line? I don't understand. It's like that answers so much.
And I've Cold. Do you remember what I said? It was
Did it have to do with Palpatine specifically?
The first part did. I don't remember. We were talking a lot about Rey and how I don't hate Rey as a character. I just think she doesn't go through enough.
Because I remember it would be meant. I think I remember us mentioning that it would have been a lot better if they had fulfilled Finn telling her about that he's Force sensitive.
Right. Finn also them actually doubling down on him being a Jedi.
Yeah.
That would have.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, would have helped a lot.
Would have been cool.
The one thing I hope for so much in this next Rey movie is make Finn a more powerful Force user.
Please.
Which, going on a tangent here, I really think they're going to because of all those Lego sets where they keep giving him a Force. They keep giving him a lightsaber, and they're gonna train with Rey, and it's like a Christmas set that just came out too, where they both have lightsabers, and they're on the Millennium Falcon, and he's got a blue one, and Rey's got her yellow one, which is the color was all messed up and it looks green. But they're both wearing Christmas sweaters, and there's a Christmas special too that Lego did where
Yes.
Rey is like, "Oh, can I learn how to be a?" Or Finn's like, "Can I learn how to be a Jedi now?" And Rey goes off and then comes back, and then that's when she starts his training
Yep.
of like, "Oh yeah,
It's a
I
good,
had to do what I
it's a
did."
good special, by the way.
It's funny, but I really think that's where they need to go with the sequels. Connor, I loved when you brought up the whole line about the clone, because I think, and I've heard somebody explain this too about that exact line. I think the biggest thing there was if Rey killed a clone of Palpatine, at least from the writer's perspective, I don't think it was. I think their intention was it was Rey finished it. And it was finally Rey who killed Palpatine at the end, being that she was his lineage, rather than it being like, oh, she just killed his clone. Like Luke and Vader actually killed him, and now he's a clone again. So like clones can keep popping up. But since they took out that line of it being like that gray area of, is it actually him? Is it him reanimated? Is it him as a clone? It kind of sets in that Rey is the one who finally was powerful enough to finish the job.
See, I think that the story is helped so much by just solidifying that he's a clone. Because I mean, he is. We know that from the other material, and it also helps, I think, the entire story be more cohesive. Because, like, yeah, Luke and Vader, they did this cosmic reset basically,
Yeah.
and then you needed someone like a Rey to come back and, when something pops up, take care of it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how I look at it. Is there was a we talked I think in our Mortis episode we talked about how like there are these the cycles of it was Abeloth, actually. We're talking about Abeloth. Like there are thousands of year cycles, right? And like in my mind, Anakin and Luke reset with Palpatine, and then the darkness will rise and the light to meet it, and then you need it's just going to constantly happen. So I think that makes, like, you can have your cake and eat it too with something like that. Like you can have Rey be a new sort of chosen one in a way, but Anakin and Luke were like the chosen ones, like there's a difference.
Another thing to acknowledge in that, and I've only really just hit me with this, and then sorry, I don't know what I was going to say, that is that the prophecy, like we never hear what the prophecy is. Like we never, like, where did this prophecy come from? Who brought it about? Who wrote this down? Right. And it's like, does it, like, Yoda says, like, or somebody says, like, well, maybe like maybe we misread it. And it's like, that's a possibility, is like, yes, like there is this person did balance it, but that doesn't mean that someone else can either. And personally, I've always chalked it up to, especially with the stuff that's injected in this book, is like, the Force is going to balance it out anyway, and Palpatine mess with the natural order of things. Plagueis is messing with the midichlorians. If the midichlorians are fighting back, and the Force fights back, and so the idea of like Palpatine, like they did bring back balance, but like Palpatine messed it up, and so and I told Cole this last night. I was like, I don't love Rey being a Palpatine for what it does, but the one saving grace that I will say is I think it's hilarious that the Force was like, oh, you're going to try to defy us and defy death. Well, now your granddaughter is the one who's going to kill you. Like, or like, your own blood, the daughter of your own clone is going to be your end. And now she has become effectively a Skywalker at this point. Like that is honestly great to me. It's just not
I think it's good too. Last thing I'll say about it is just I think that the biggest issue I have, and a lot of other people have, with Rey as a character is she has kind of stolen the agency from a character like Luke. Like Luke is the one who he did it. He was supposed to rebuild the new Jedi Order and all this stuff, and now Rey's that character.
I think,
and it's I don't know why.
I
think that you're automatically setting your character up for failure, because I really like Force Awakens. I think Rey is awesome. I like her a lot in The Last Jedi, and then she's all right in Rise of Skywalker. But it's like that's the issue I have, is why remove Luke Skywalker? Like Luke destroyed the Emperor. He was supposed to rebuild the Jedi Order, and now Rey destroyed the Emperor, and now she's going to rebuild the Jedi Order.
And
it's like,
brought back a Skywalker to the light side.
And and Seth and I were just talking about this. Like Rey gets another movie, right? She's getting a movie, but whenever people talk about Luke, it's like Luke's story is done. He can't have another movie. What do you mean? He can't be the main character.
Yeah.
It's like
I
I don't
think-
understand.
Hey, yep, you're making me mad.
I think I think once if people or the creators or executives or whatever can find a way to, like, first of all, at least show us, Luke getting to the point of where he is in the sequels can do a lot. And I know that could take a lot of work, but that would be helpful. Another thing is I think this Rey movie could do a lot for her character in the sense of like that, not that like bring her up. I mean, they could do that, but necessarily like bring her down a notch, like let's see her go through some stuff. Cause that's the one thing is what I told Cole is I was like, Rey doesn't like, I like Rey. I think she is the epitome of like, she's a very warm character. Like I think of Rey and I'm like, she's kind of this radiance, and especially for a female character in Star Wars, that's very impactful. And I want Rey not necessarily to be like, I don't want her to be like Ahsoka, but I want her to be on the level of like how revered Ahsoka is, because I just Rey isn't there. There's so many people who hate Rey, and I just think it's unwarranted. I mean, yes, she's the weakest written character. Sorry,
I was just gonna say they should have taken the Ahsoka approach, because I don't know if you've ever heard this from Filoni, but Filoni purposefully made Ahsoka unlikable, so that she could grow into somebody that you did like, because he understood the problem. Okay, I'm going to be dropping a new character in with the greats, with Obi-Wan, with Anakin, with Yoda, and it's like, how do you make people care about that character? Well, we'll just make them not care about her. We'll make her be really annoying. But then as she goes, and I think why Ahsoka's so successful as a character is that she is intrinsically tied with the legacy of all of our other characters, where it feels like Rey has robbed the legacy of all the other characters, and she's not intrinsically tied. And they didn't have to do that. That's what's weird to me. It's like they didn't need to do that. They could have. I think
they really need to do, in a weird way, a Miles Morales approach, where like, hey, you don't need to be Peter Parker Spider-Man. You just need to be Spider-Man. Right?
Anyone can wear the mask.
Right. It's just like, you don't need to be Luke Skywalker. You don't need to be Anakin Skywalker. You can just be this new legacy of Jedi, and whatever she goes through, I think that would be
reach. That's it, man. She just, and that's what's I think that's where a lot of people have issues with it, is it myself included. I like a lot about it, but it does frustrate me, because I'm like, she just robs my heroes of their heroism, and I'm like, but I want to like her, because I love Daisy Ridley. I think she's fantastic. I love like I said, I think you put it best. She's a very warm character.
It also would have been better if, like you said, I don't know if I would use the terminology robbing characters of their heroism. I think that was more intertwined with them robbing the actual heroes of their heroism, in terms of like Luke cowarding and falling back and that kind of thing. It was like it was a hand-in-hand thing of like, oh, Rey's doing this fantastic thing that we all thought Luke was going to do at some point after the original trilogy, but not only that, Rey's doing it and Luke is also a coward.
That's what I'm saying, is like, imagine the sequel's exactly the same, except for Luke is right by her side, at least after she finds him.
Well, I'm curious.
It's like it's perfect, because I remember reading theories at the end of Force Awakens that, to backtrack a moment, that according to Ryan, like Ryan was trying to deconstruct why would Luke go so against his character and be on Ahch-To, right? So in his mind, it was because he failed and he was going to be and he was a coward at this point. I remember reading theories when Force Awakens came out, because the same question was being asked: why would Luke abandon his friends and do all this stuff? And I remember reading a very prominent theory that he was guarding some sort of Sith temple. And he knew that if Kylo found it, that was it. It was game over. And so he was doing what he felt was the most selfless thing, which was taking himself out of the action to guard this massive power.
Would have been,
and it's like,
so
there were
much better.
And there are other ways to do that. I just don't get it. I just don't get why. I don't mind his arc, We got way off the rails on the sequel.
I was going to say, we probably should wrap it up. I know multiple of us have been like, let's wrap it up. I want to say though, my last thing is, we haven't finished the book yet. We will obviously come back at the end of January to finish out Plagueis, but I'm gonna throw out a little spitball here. With how Plagueis has been set up thus far, we've been talking about the Rey movie. If Plagueis, or something that Plagueis created, came back in a project set after the Skywalker saga, would that intrigue you? And I'm not necessarily saying that it intrigues me, but I'm like, man, Rey versus Plagueis would be very interesting.
No, that just seems like more about playing the hits. Like, get some new stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only,
and it's also a clone of Boba Fett. Like,
I think I think the only thing that I would be able to accept that or like be all right with it, because I had thought about this before. I think something really interesting about I'll give you guys a minute. I think something really interesting about Plagueis' death is that it's thrown up in the air as to like if he actually died. Like Palpatine's standing there going like, did something happen? Where did he go? And since we don't actually know, what I thought would be interesting is, like let's, if we're following, Balin in season 2 of Ahsoka, I don't know, like what if he went in there and found some amalgamation of like what Plagueis is like, like transcended beyond like a mortal being or something like that. I don't know. It could be like an interesting,
like seeing Plagueis in the world between worlds or something like that. You mean?
Like it, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I'm vastly more interested in whatever we see beyond the Skywalker saga of the villains not necessarily being like mainline Sith or dark side users, but it being something that like, I mean, I pitched something kind of wild to Cole yesterday. I don't know if you guys want to hear it. Okay.
Let's
well,
hear it.
I have a friend. If Will is my resident Luke Skywalker fan, I have a friend that I go to the gym with that he's the resident Anakin Skywalker fan, right? And I made a thing where I was like,
there's always one.
Yeah, it would be really cool if like in this Rey project or whatever, 2 different outcomes. These are kind of 2 different scenarios, but the idea of, let's say that there is something like that has taken over Mortis or something on a galactic, not galactic, but a level of the Force that is grand, right? Anakin is in this kind of weird state where like, and Mortis is in this weird state, or the world between worlds, where like it blurs the lines between the physical realm and the spiritual realm, which ties a little bit to Plagueis stuff as well. But we've seen Anakin, like he was physically there, but like it's up to interpretation. My idea is like, whether it's, it doesn't really matter what the enemy is, but the idea of, something like Abeloth or, whether it's Balin, and he's thwarping, whatever, something like that, work out the kinks later. The idea of properly getting whatever in this mystical realm, whether it's the world between worlds or Mortis itself, of getting Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker as Hayden Christensen fighting whatever this being is in the Force, like next to each other, like
in Shadows of the Sith book.
Is that happen? I thought Anakin was only a Force ghost in that. I'm talking physically there. I'm talking like they're in this like otherworldly dimension, right? Where like Luke is physically there and Anakin is physically there.
Would I love to see it? Yeah. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not.
Probably not.
I think the only way we would see that is something like a Tales of the Jedi animation of what happened in Shadows of the Sith, of like Anakin as a Force ghost helping an older Luke, and then that being explained as to why Anakin like just dissipated into the Force, and that's why he wasn't around for the sequels. I think that would be the closest of like seeing them team up. Seth?
Thrawn clones Anakin. Luke has to fight Anakin. That's how you're gonna do it.
A Chiss clone of Anakin.
No, he clones Anakin.
Instead of cloning
I thought it
Luke.
was going to be blue.
No.
I just like the idea of the Force bringing...
You'd want everyone to be blue.
You're right. The blue man group,
Ronnie.
please.
I really love the visual, and I always wanted this with Rise of Skywalker, and it was either going to be all of the Skywalkers or the visual of Rey, Finn, and Ben all together squaring up against whatever it is. The idea of like, say that there's something set in this Rey thing or whatever, and like, and the physical or the spiritual beings of Luke and Anakin and Ben Solo, all 3 generations of Skywalkers. Throw Leia in there. I don't care. She trained as a Jedi for a bit too. Like, she's a Force ghost. the idea of all of them being like next to each other, and then like the leaked Acolyte trailer that I totally didn't watch, of like just up against something on the caliber of Abeloth, like like that is the only thing that would kind of square up to that, but it's outlandish. Go ahead.
I'm being a Seth right now. That move is called being polite. The Seth. I love it. I tweeted something out maybe 2 months ago where it was Cal Kestis, Luke, Ahsoka, Leia, Ezra, and all of them together. And I was like, some people legitimately think that there's going to be an Avengers Endgame style lineup of Jedi during this time period. And I'm like, from Thrawn, of what we've seen at this point, I don't think Thrawn is a big enough bad to call in every Force user that might potentially be alive at this point to do the Wong, you wanted somebody else sort of thing.
Yeah.
Seth? But
Ahsoka and Luke versus an Anakin clone. Avengers 1. You could have that. A baby one. Yeah.
I have a hard time getting by with all of the cloning stuff. I have to take it with a grain of salt, but especially when it comes to Force users, but because Plagueis even mentions that the idea of, which I connected it a little bit to Moff Gideon and Grogu, is that he tries to inject or there's been attempts to inject midichlorians into people, and it boosts their strength and resistance to stuff for a while, but it doesn't make them Force sensitive, It's that perversion of the Force and the midichlorians that I really
and the blood transfusions failed, and the people became incredibly warped and gross, and it just never worked.
It's the Force fighting back, resisting that. Yeah. Star Wars Resistance, which is what we're talking about next. I'm kidding.
All right. So
if you're just tuning in now, we've only been talking about Star Wars Resistance for the last 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's the whole.
It's crazy. It's just
Plagueis was really good, guys. I think I'm personally I got to wrap up real soon.
Same.
So, any last thoughts before we conclude? Just about where we're at right now at chapter 15.
R2 thought it was great.
Perfect.
I'm glad you like it, R2.
Someone asked, what's a good Revan book? There's a book called Revan. Read that. Okay. I know that sounds stupid. Or you could play Knights of the Old Republic. That's where you're going to get your information.
There is the Revan DLC.
That's what I'm going to do.
That book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Revan.
So same author as the Bane trilogy. You didn't know that. Drew Karpshin or whatever.
Well, guys, it was terrific. I'm enjoying the book so far quite a lot. I'm excited to dive into the last half and reconvene with all of you guys at the end of January. That's what we're thinking.
Yes, we will. We will nail down a concrete.
Announce.
Yeah, we'll go. We will nail down a concrete date very soon. But yes, it will be towards the final week of January or somewhere around there.
Fantastic. Cool.
I had a blast.
I pitched something to Grayson. Before
you did
the thing with Jocasta Nu at the beginning where she says, if it's not in the archives, it does not exist. That should be our tagline to end every episode, and be like, all right, we'll see you next time, and if it isn't in the archives, it does not exist. So if somebody would like to do that,
you just did.
You just did. Do it again.
And that's the end of the stream, guys. I'm waiting for somebody to do that, so that'd be fantastic. Should I just end it now? Is that how we want to end this? The most abrupt ending ever?
Just say the quote.
If it doesn't exist in the archives, whatever.